Well, I'm so happy to have you. Let's start it. Welcome to Aurora Airwaves. You're one of the guests, Dave, that I've been wanting to have since day one, and I've been like,
Oh my God.
practicing and getting up to speed so I could actually do this the right way, which I think is just
Oh,
gonna be
brilliant.
like us riffing on ideas and
Well,
stuff.
I remember talking to you at that thing and we started to have a really interesting chat. And then, yeah, no, it's great. Great to carry on.
I mean, your
And
conversations have been just like the most interesting that I've
well,
ever been able to hear.
your uncle and aunt were massively supportive of me and they've helped me all the way along the line. So I feel a big connection with the Bianchis, even, well, for Jay for years and years. But,
Oh yeah.
they've been so supportive. And it was because it's a very difficult thing to go through what I went through, And because when you start questioning everything, what I wasn't expecting was, oh, the central heating to go on. Can you hear it?
No, I don't hear it.
Okay.
You're
Um,
good.
yeah, what I wasn't expecting is people to go so frigging crazy around me. And Jay and Pilly were always very sort of, come around, hang out, it's cool, everything's okay. So they were being incredibly supportive, because yeah, what happened was I was never interested in religion. I wasn't brought up with a religious background or anything. And then after 9/11, it's sort of, I actually believed 9/11. I sort of thought it was what it was supposed to be and all that sort of stuff. And then the more I thought about it, and the more I got a really good friend who's actually a top scientist, and he said, "Well, it's not what it looked like. That's not possible." And then I started saying, "What do you mean?" And asking, and then the sort of the whole sort of facade of everything started to sort of crumble. And then
Yeah.
I was wrote a piece in America for James Galway, and he's very sort of Christian, and he said to me, "Hey Dave, this is how I used to be. Hey Dave, you should read the Bible. It's a great book. I'll get you a copy if you promise to read it." So I sort of thought, well, it's because it's Jimmy, like okay, right, you get me a copy, I'll read it. So because it was Jimmy, and I was living up in Edinburgh, so I was coming down to work in London all the time, and I'd started reading the Bible. But anyway, I think Jimmy's idea that I was going to become a sort of hardcore Christian, but what happened was I started getting really, really angry. Like I started ripping pages out of the Old Testament and then
Wow.
getting the whole Bible and then throwing it out of the window
What were you getting
and
angry about? Like, what were the triggers?
well, I mean, well, okay, what I was getting angry about this. Well, for a start, it says that Abraham was going to chop his own son's head off because God told him, and I sort of thought, well, what sort of lesson is that? I mean, you know what I mean? If you're stupid enough to believe that, I mean, if I said to you, I've got one of my sons and I'm about to chop his head off because God told me to, you would call the police immediately and I'd be whisked off to some, but in the Bible it says to be this wonderful thing about, and then God said, oh no, you don't have to do that. And I just thought, hang on, that's a terrible lesson in mind control and total stupidity. So and then it started talking about, stoning women to death because they've been unfaithful, and then that came out, and then anti-gay stuff really pissed me off, and I started ripping that out, and then and so sort of, and then I started thought, well, I better get. So then Ange sort of says, oh, I think you should go and speak to the sort of local vicar. So I started speaking to them, and I started arguing with them, and I was going, well, I don't even understand what the Old Testament's got to do with the New Testament. It seems to be a completely different message. And at one point in the New Testament, he says, you've heard it said, an eye for an eye. Well, that's Old Testament, but I
Mhm.
give you a new teaching. So even Christ himself didn't believe in the Old Testament or had problems with it. So I'm thinking, why is it even in the same book? And anyway, this went on, and it sort of got worse and worse. And eventually, I thought, right, I can't understand what the hell this is all about. There must have been some incredible guy and some amazing things, but I don't know what this is about. So then I started reading the Quran,
Mhm.
and I went down to the mosque, and I said to them, and I read it in two different translations, and I said, I don't understand this. It's okay. Muhammad is God's messenger. Okay, fine. But what's the message? And they say, well, the message is that he's the messenger. And I said, no, but hang on. That's not a message. I'm just asking you what the message was. And they would go, no, the message is there's one God and he's the messenger. And I said, well, how long was he talking to Allah for? Oh, about 20 years. I said, well, that's funny. You could have that conversation in about 2 minutes. I mean, that's not like, there's one God and you're the messenger. And then I started to think that I gave up on it. I said, look, I've got nothing against you guys. They're actually very friendly down the mosque. They're very friendly to me. But I just thought, nah, like I'm just trying to find out what's going on. And then it's just interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay. And then
Yeah. No, this is
okay, and then
fantastic. No,
all
because
right,
it's
okay.
like no, because it's like I'm trying to follow the path of
The journey.
because you're
Yeah, yeah.
doing all this artistic stuff at the same time as you're doing all this, and it's like I'm interested in like why were you so interested in all of this? Like, what was
Well, no,
that
that, this
pull
is
that
what
made you
no,
figure it
this is
out?
what spot no, but this is what's so interesting because it's actually the subconscious mind. But anyway, I'll get to
Oh,
that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then I started reading what the Dalai Lama said, and he said that the point of your life is to become more conscious. And so
Hmm.
I thought, well, hang about, because at this point I gave up on religion. I just thought, okay, I'm going to just work this out for myself. It can't be that complicated. So I thought, if the point of our lives is to become more conscious, then maybe everything is trying to become more conscious, like right back to an atomic level. And maybe like gravitational force is actually the atoms trying to attract to create greater consciousness. In other words, a striving for greater consciousness is what's going on at an atomic and subatomic level, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
I didn't know if that was true. I just thought, well, that sort of makes sense. But I thought I could also be talking a lot of crap. But I just thought, well, that makes sense to me. Anyway, then I'm in America, with your uncle and aunt, and I bumped into this woman. By this point, I was sort of angry, but trying to suss it out myself. And she said, oh, what's up with you then? And I said, oh, I've been on this, by then it must have been 8-year quest to find the truth, and I just can't wait. I can't work anything out. The only thing I think is that it might be gravitational force, might just what I've said to you.
Yeah.
And she said, "Oh, well, that's quite interesting because that's pretty much what's said from the other side." You see. So she said, "Look, maybe you're ready for a channeling." And I sort of go, "Oh, what's that?" And she said, "Well, if you come round to my house tomorrow, I'll channel for you." And so so I went back to your uncle and aunt's place. I said, "Oh, I met this woman, and she said she'll channel for me." And of course, they were quite into it. So Billy's going sort of
Yeah.
like, "Oh, that's great. That's amazing," sort of thing. So I turn up at her house, and I didn't know her at all. I never met her, And she said, "Do you want me to go?" She said, "If I go into a full trance," she said, my voice will change and my I'll look different." And she said it's pretty freaky. But she said, just as long as you don't puke everywhere, I'll do that. Or I'll do tarot, and that just gets my mind onto you. But she said that tarot's it's not as accurate like
Right.
that.
Yeah.
So I sort of thought, well, look, I'm in America, like I'm in New York, like you only live once. Well, that's
You
what I thought at
gotta.
the time. And
Right.
so I said, oh no, let's go for the full shooting
Minutes
match. I said,
before. Yeah.
yeah, let's go for the whole thing. And so she goes, okay, are you sure? Because it's pretty out there. So she goes into this trance. It took about 7 or 8 minutes to do it. It's not instant,
Okay.
And then suddenly her voice changed, and it was completely different. And then this voice started talking to me, sort of thing, about all these past lives and different things. And I'm just thinking, and I was scared. I must admit, honestly, Jordan, I thought of actually doing a runner. I thought this is so bizarre. I just thought maybe I should just do a runner, and then I thought I'm not going to do a
At least
fucking
Jane
runner,
Pilley knew where you were. Like, hope they have the
Yeah, I
answers.
just sort of thought, well, I'm going to ask all the questions that I've wanted to ask. So
Yeah, that would be the
so then
time.
so then I started. So and one of the things she said to me was that I'd been a Cathar in a previous life. Well, that meant nothing to me anyway. But I just thought, oh, didn't it was all on tape, so I didn't pay any attention to that. But anyway, then I asked who was the original Christ, and then I asked about Prophet Muhammad, and then I asked, whether you
Oh,
could
wow.
travel faster than the speed of light, how many galaxies there are. I mean, every question that had been on my mind, I asked, and then they answered it. But the answers were just sort of mind blowing, you know.
Yeah, were they satisfactory or are they just so esoteric that you couldn't hold on to anything?
Oh no, it was all very factual. It was like, oh, okay, I'll tell you what she said. I'll try and get it word for word. I asked who's the original Christ. She said Christ was a great practicing yogi who studied in India for 18 years, expansion of the mind to allow healing of the body. He did not agree with eye for an eye, which causes such terrible suffering. And he taught his followers to open a crown chakra to receive divine light. That was some of it. There was more, but in other words,
Oh,
so
that
he
checks
he was
out.
much more along the Dalai Lama lines
Yeah.
than sort of the son of a Christian church kind of
It seems pretty
thing.
straightforward with the opening of the chakras.
Well, exactly. So I mean, it's
I mean, that checks
actually.
out.
I know. No, it wasn't anything. And then I said, "Can you after death?" I said, "Can you travel to other galaxies and stuff?" And I said, "They said you can." And I said, "Well, so are you traveling faster than the speed of light?" And she says, "No." She said that time appears to us to be linear, but it's actually like a curtain. And she says you're sort of moving through space and time. You're not actually moving through, just space kind of thing. So
Right.
I don't quite know what that means, but I mean that was the answer. So in other words, you can. but you're not moving. You're not sort of like 11 light years away, sort of thing. It's like it's sort of instantaneously moving through space time somehow.
Yeah.
Um,
You're folding
and
it.
then then anyway, then so when I calmed down about this afterwards, I was sort of completely blown away. I was just like, my God, wait a minute. If reincarnation is true,
Hmm.
then and everything that we've been taught, everything that I've been taught, every religion, well, except for Buddhism, but every religion is basically wrong. Science is wrong. Everything I'd learned was basically not right. If this was true, I didn't sort of leave her place and just go thinking, oh, that's true. I thought, okay, I'm going to go to the lead scientists at Edinburgh University and ask them about quantum physics and all this sort of stuff. And then it turns out that actually the lead scientists don't actually know what's going on at all anymore. I mean, and like if you had asked a scientist like 30 years ago or 50 years ago, what's an atom? They'd say, oh, it's a little grain of sand surrounded by electrons and stuff.
Hmm.
And he actually said this to me. He said, well, if you'd asked me sort of 40 years ago, I could have told you what an atom is. And he said, actually, now we haven't got a clue. He said, but it seems to be some sort of multidimensional energy existing in the past, present, and infinite futures.
Hmm.
And then because he said the theory of magnetism works as a theory, and the theory of relativity works as a theory. The theory of electromagnetism works as a theory. The theory of relativity works as a theory. But he says when you put the two theories together, they can only work if every atom is some sort of multidimensional energy existing in a past, present, and infinite future simultaneously. And I said,
Hmm.
well, that's exactly what's said from the other side. So I said, really, what I was learning was very advanced quantum physics, which but the difficulty was then I realized that, hang on, this psychic thing with women, like goes back thousands of years. In other words, like Isis would have talked about this, Queen of Sheba would have talked about this, Mary Magdalene would have talked
Mm.
about this,
There we go.
but
Yeah.
it wouldn't have been understood at the time, like the wife of the Prophet Muhammad was called Khadija bint Khuwailid. She was a great psychic. So in other words, his original teaching was God's message, but God's message it's all this stuff. It's very advanced, and it's sort of understanding what reincarnation is, because that's what then fascinated me. Like I thought, okay, if I've had all these past lives and stuff, what's it got to do with me now?
Yeah.
And then I realized that when I was writing music, I was actually sort of opening the crown chakra, or you could describe it like that, but or musicians would just say you're getting in the zone. It's just different words for the same thing.
Mhm.
And I was actually having visions. A lot of my pieces were written about psychic visions, but I didn't know that's what they were. So
Really?
yeah. So I wrote a piece in 1986 about people being burnt alive and then surviving death and coming out of their bodies and stuff. And I never told anyone what it was about. I just thought it was mystical twaddle. But then it
Hmm.
turned out that being a Cathar, a lot of them had been burnt alive, and I'd seen that. So in other words,
Hmm.
it was a past life memory. And now one thing I've discovered, one thing I've thought about a lot recently is like, in your life, Jordan, like certain points are very powerful to you. Like you can think about, I remember the time when I did this, and it's like, past lives are like that as well. So in other words, like if you've had sort of quite a nice, calm past life, it probably won't in the next life. It probably, I mean, it's still there. It's all there in your subconscious mind, but it
Hmm.
probably won't stick out in a emotional way because whereas for instance, so a lot of the times when you see these reincarnation programs on the TV, you'll have some guy that's been in 9/11, for instance. Now 9/11, you'd have just been going to work on a beautiful sunny day and suddenly you're in this absolute hell. Well, on your sort of past life timeline, that's a massive bump, or if you've been in Vesuvius sort of eruption and been suffocated or something. So all these big dramatic events. So because people sometimes say to me, isn't it weird how all these reincarnation things, it's always someone that's been in some dramatic thing? And then I realized, no, it's not. It's because those things are sticking out because they've been very traumatic. If you see it a bit like in your own life, something traumatic happens. So in other words, these past
Hmm.
lives, it's almost like our own life extended backwards. And then I realized that, what you've done in your past lives completely affects who you are. It's almost like who you are, if you see what I mean. So even though I couldn't
Right.
remember it, I've always been a heretic. So okay, so the Catholic Church, was against the Cathars, and so when I was reading the Old Testament, they didn't believe in the Old Testament, and they were against. So in other words, I was connecting with that, but I didn't know that's what I was connecting with. If you see what I mean.
Yeah.
So it was a whole sort of. So I really wanted to understand what reincarnation is. And so then I started asking, is so and so so and so, and is so and so so and so, and I wasn't always right by a long way, but I was trying to understand what it is. Now, what's
Hmm.
interesting is it turns out that all women in their past lives have studied at priestess schools, because I asked this question, actually, it came about because I was asking about a specific person. I was saying, oh, was she a high priestess from us? And they said, look, you've got to understand that all women have studied at the priestess schools, so somewhere, it might be a long way back, so all women have got all this very advanced psychic knowledge, but because it's been called witchcraft and stuff for the last 2,000 years, a lot of them are frightened to talk about it.
So how
And
do you
so,
define like the priestess or like the priestess schools and
well,
like what
okay,
is being taught?
well, no, okay, well, I can tell you that I found out that I was a teacher in a priestess school, so like it would be a bit like the Royal Ballet School, I think. Like, okay, you go into the village, and people would say, "Oh, we think this girl's very psychic," like she's having dreams and visions, and she seems to be hearing voices and stuff, and like, um, and so then she would be taken into the priestess school, maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 times a week, and then
Like to
they'd
learn
be
how to
taught like
interpret that
never to
and
use it for negative energy, never to put hexes on people, because
Mhm.
that's just a complete abuse of it. It can be done, but it mustn't ever be done. It's never to be used for war. It's never to be used. What it's got to be used for, and then you take them off to the high priestess, and she'd be a trance psychic. So that Isis was a trance psychic. Mary
Mhm.
Magdalene was a trance psychic. So in other words, you take them off, and then they would be taken on to higher levels by the actual high priestess. But it's almost like the girls that are really talented would be taken into the high priestess school. You see what I mean? So it's whereas now it's something that's demonized. In the ancient Egyptian times, it was like well, the queen would be, it's a bit like the queen bee, like the woman with the greatest psychic power would become the new queen. So, in other words, the Queen of Sheba was a great psychic. Isis was a great, well, Isis, Hathor, Mat, they were all the same woman in different incarnations, but it wasn't just one woman.
Mhm.
There's probably 4 or 5 on that level. So they would all sort of, they all sort of swap around, but all women have got psychic ability more than us, but because we rule the world. We don't understand it, and it's been sort of it's a demonized talent. So I'm just trying to, because I totally believe in it. I sort of I'm trying to sort of bring it back. That's my mission.
Well, so
Not that I'm
how are you infusing all of this like divine feminine energy within yourself? Like why do you think that if like because from what I know about reincarnation, it's like what is the soul contract? Like the soul has chosen to live certain lives again and again, or whatever the next lives have to be so that it can learn certain lessons and interact with people in certain ways.
yeah.
Why do you
I think
think
that's
that
I
you
think that
were
all that's
here?
going on. So I think I'm learning all sorts of stuff that I haven't done before. And but my main mission is I'm trying to I come from the high priestess schools, and I'm
Hmm.
trying to sort of give women the confidence to think, oh, there's a bloke who really believes in us. Oh, yeah, sod it, sort of thing, because like because blokes have put women down from that. It's almost like the ultimate Me Too. But what I've discovered is that men are very good in space and time, because we think very much sort of like it's 3 o'clock, we've got to do this, got to do that, wash the car, watch the TV, I think women aren't so good at, but we're very good at punching and stuff because it's space and it's time, or driving cars, it's
Right.
space and time. But women are much more connected to outside space and time, so they're more sort of dreamy, and I don't even think they're necessarily all experiencing time quite like we do. So now I used to get really angry with Ange, like she'll turn up an hour late, and I think, but we said 3 o'clock, like why can't you just turn up at time? But now I realize I never get pissed off like that. I think for women it's sort of like, oh yeah, I'm just, so, so, and I can't lose my keys within a minute of finding them, but women can do all sorts of stuff we can't do. No, but it's joking aside, it's that they're much more attached to those dimensions. And what I've realised is it's like a musical talent. So it's not like people sort of say, "Oh, he's psychic," or "She's not psychic," or "She is psychic," but it's not like that. It's like everyone can play the flute,
Hmm.
for instance, to a certain level, but then you get your James Galways, and you get your very good professionals, and you get your semi-professionals, and psychic ability is just exactly like that. It's all different levels, but the very great ones are they're very protected as well, because you have to look after them, because that level of information coming through to people that have abused it
Hmm.
isn't a good thing. Because you could ask questions about all sorts of stuff which shouldn't be asked, if you see what I mean. So you have to be very responsible with it. So, for instance, I wouldn't ask anything about politics. I wouldn't ask. All I ever asked about the truth of existence and trying to understand what was going on. I wouldn't. I wouldn't ask a question about. Should I make money out of this? Is this going to go down? You know what I mean? Because to me, that's it's almost like getting a chance to speak to God.
Oh,
Why are
I
you
love
going to
asking
ask?
questions like that though. and in readings and like spiritual conversations, I think it's great because a lot of the times it's
What do you
like,
mean? Well, okay, I'll tell you. Okay, I'll tell you
yeah,
something that she told me, and I didn't ask this. This was in 2006. She said there's going to be a global financial crash starting in 2008 that's going to be worse than the 1929 crash, right? But actually, that freaked me out. And I was telling everyone, I said, "Oh God, this woman, she said there's going to be a financial crash." And then all these, I actually spoke to various financial experts. They go, "There is going to be no crash in 2008. She's talking rubbish, and sort of thing." So anyway, yeah, and we know what happened next. But it's
hmm
but then you have to respond in the right way. And anyway, like I didn't ask that question. That was just told to me. But I wouldn't use it for that. And I also wouldn't ask for what's for futuristic things either, because what I've realized is that for instance, supposing I said, well, I'm a flute player, right, John? So supposing I said, am I going to be a famous flute player? I'm a bit late for that now, but I mean, if I did, and I'm practicing all day long and it's going really well, and I said, am I going to be, and then from the other side, they said, yes, you are. And then I thought, oh, I'm going to be famous flute player, so I'll stop practicing. And then the next thing, you don't become a great flute player because you stop practicing. Well, what's happened there is that their answer has affected what you've done.
it
So
affects the
if you
timeline,
are,
so therefore you can't
yeah,
interact with the
it's
world in the
affected the
same
time
way.
because all time is happening at the same place. So it's actually affecting
hmm
what you're doing. So in other words, you shouldn't ask a question like that. If you want to be a great flute player or do something great, you have to just try and do what you want to do, and hopefully the signs will be there to help you. But you can't ask a question like that because it's actually you're asking infinite dimensions outside time to and they're just sort of looking at you thinking, oh God, how are we going to answer this? You know what I mean, sort of thing.
But don't you think
So
that's similar to like
it took me a
asking?
long time to understand this, by the way. I'm
Yeah.
talking like it took me like 10 years. I would go back with more and more questions every year, and and it got deeper and deeper and deeper and
Good.
deeper. And
Good.
eventually the concepts that were being talked about were beyond my comprehension. So I just thought, okay, I'm going to leave it there, like that. And now we're just really good friends. We hang out and we just play music and have a laugh. But it's like I realized that if you go too far with it, it's almost like it's too complex. And she
Like you don't
often
know how to
said,
apply it.
yeah, and what use would it be? Like so. And I was just asking questions. Well, started off for myself, but then I thought, well, I mean, I can share these concepts because they're not. I mean, they're difficult to understand, but they're quite sort of simple if if you can sort of lay it out. I try and lay things out in a simple way. Like for instance, I'll give you an example. I always try to think, how can I explain something? Like how can you explain to someone how time isn't and is happening? Look, I'm experiencing time, but
hmm
in some different dimension, it's not happening in the same way. I thought, how could you describe that? And I was actually on a running machine, and I sort of was running away, and it's all very serious down the gym, and everyone's sort of like, And I suddenly thought, oh God, and I just suddenly started laughing. I couldn't stop laughing. And everyone's going, suddenly your machine proper. And I suddenly realised that a running machine has the same paradox. I mean, if I say to you, Jordan, like, okay, you've run a mile on a running machine. I mean, have you run a mile or haven't you? Well, it's not a straightforward question. I mean, you have and you haven't. There is and there isn't. It depends what, are you looking at it from the point of view of someone standing on the ground, or are you looking at it from how you feel that you have, but actually you haven't?
hmm
And so it's the same sort of thing as time, like, and another thing I've been thinking recently, like if you look at, say, how, like if you look at someone and they're with their mates and they put on those virtual reality goggles, and suddenly they're sort of doing and they're moving out and they're sort of going mad, and then they take the goggles off and then all their friends are laughing at them. I think that's a bit like what it's like after death. You take off this sort of cloak of unreality and you suddenly think, oh my God, it was all sort of an experience.
Have you met
So
people that have had like NDEs and stuff?
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah,
How
they
have
all
they
seem to
described it?
oh, pretty amazing. They didn't really want to come back, but they sort of came back.
That's
Um,
what Carl Jung was. He was pissed off that he had to come back when the surgeon brought him back to life because he saw so many beautiful things.
yeah, yeah, and I think it is like that. I mean, they have said to me on the other side that death is nothing to fear. It's just an amazing. They actually said for the person dying, it's amazing, but everyone around them is sort of crying, and they're sort of like, bloody hell, sort of thing. And but they also said that it takes about 2 or 3 months to sort of reconnect with who you really are. Like they describe it as you have to go through these 10 astral planes of existence. In other words, so like if I
Mhm.
died now and you wanted to speak to me through a great psychic, it would take like 2 or 3 months for me to actually become at the level of being at one with everything, if you see what
Like
I
you're
mean.
still transitioning through these planes into
Yeah,
like
you're
your
it's
true
not
higher
like
self.
it's not like you're dead, and it takes quite a long time, and I think it's probably a bit like, well, in your life, like there are various stages, like, you learn to crawl, and then you learn to walk, and then you go to school, and then you meet someone, have an affair, then you get married, then I think it's a whole sort of stages of things, you know what I mean? That you got. I don't think there's a fixed time. I think, for instance, after Christ died, I mean, he's so advanced spiritually that it probably didn't. I mean, it says in the Bible it's 3 days, but I think it's probably longer than that. But it wouldn't be as long as most people because he's already so advanced that nothing would be surprising him, if you see what I mean. Whereas, if you've got some
Yeah.
blokey bloke who's I don't believe in all that rubbish, well, when he dies, he's going to be in for a bit of a surprise, and it's going to take him longer to sort of rise through and sort of, oh yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah, of course, yeah, you know what. So yeah, but then a lot of people see now. I mean, the Dalai Lama's got. My understanding of reincarnation is a bit different to the traditional Buddhist one, for instance. So
Yeah, what's the difference? I was gonna ask, like, where all
well,
the astral planes come from and whatnot.
I've asked all these questions. These the sort of thing. Like, okay, everything's got a spirit, like animals, plants, everything. But we don't reincarnate into animal spirit because what. But we do have relationship with animals over many lives. So you might have a dog that's come to you many times before, and you feel like it's a protective
Mm,
father energy, but it doesn't actually mean that that dog is your father. It means that you've got a father-like relationship or daughter-like relationship or whatever. And we often meet the same people in different incarnations. And the other thing is that we've all been black, we've all been white, and we've all been male, and we've all been female. So all this sort of fighting over sort of race and stuff is actually a complete misunderstanding of what's going on. This is just a cloak of who you are. So you
mhm.
might be a slave owner and a really vicious slave owner, and then in this incarnation you're born black, and then the next thing you're sort of going about slave. But it's really how you act in your life that's important, not even like, and it's not a punishment either. It's like you've got to understand what's going on and then try and do better. That's the point of it, not sort of
Well, I
oh,
think
you've
it's
done something
interesting
wrong.
that like so much of the energies from the other lives, like as you're like sharing like about your vision and how it's influenced your music and whatnot, like
Yeah.
the horrors that the Cathars had to experience, like that carried on emotionally to your next life. So like, what is the
Well, yeah,
point
it
of
was
that?
yeah, it was
So
horrific.
you can
Yeah,
remember it and then have the choice to heal it in a new
I
setting?
didn't remember it so much like word for word, but it was just more. I kept having these visions and not understanding it. No, I mean what
Mhm.
happened at the Cathars was like there was 240 of them left, stuck at Montsegur, and I was one of them.
How
I
many
was
were
one of the
there
young.
before the Catholic Church went after
Yeah,
them?
there was 240,000 of them were killed.
In
Or it's
France,
a
right?
Yeah, European genocide, yeah. But then eventually, sort of like there was only 200. Now, one of them, the leader, was actually the reincarnation of John the Baptist. So the Catholic Church, if they'd been a bit more aware of what they were doing, might have thought twice about that. But of course, he wasn't going to become Catholic because he was a great Tibetan Buddhist. I mean, so I mean, he didn't want to hurt the Inquisition troops either because he believed in bringing people up to your level of understanding, and you can't do it by killing him. So basically, they said, well, you've either got to become Catholic or not. And he said, well, I'll go with the no option, and yeah, so 200 were burnt alive. So that's as strong as the crucifixion, you know what I mean? And that was only in 1244,
Yeah.
which is a long time ago. But anyway, what happened is that they had an original copy of Mary Magdalene Gospel, and he
Oh,
asked us four young ones, and he asked us to bury it. So and we managed to do it, but well, we were chased by the Inquisition, and then some of them died, and it was horrible. I mean, it's horrible, dogs and all sorts of stuff. But anyway, I've written this.
how did they get the gospel of Mary Magdalene?
Well, it was
Or
stolen
you,
out of
but like,
it was stolen out of Nicaea because there were a lot of copies of it. And what happened in sort of 320 and then 530 at Nicaea, they had
mm,
these meetings where various gospels were decided. We're not having this one, we're not having
council.
that one. We're going to have
Yeah.
this, and they basically made this sort of religion that was look. There were great, love each other, love your enemy. That is his main teaching. That is in there. And actually, reincarnation is in there as well. He says you've got to be born again many times, and the body is made of water and the spirit is separate. It's like the wind, it goes wherever it wants. So actually
Oh,
that's identical to what I believe. But you see, trouble with words is, so if you speak to a traditional Christian, they'd say, "Oh, that bloke doesn't know what he's talking about." It's basically, you've got to douse yourself in water and say you're a Christian, and then you're born again in this lifetime. So okay, I mean, yeah, okay, maybe I'm wrong, but to me, it's a very advanced understanding of reincarnation. What he's talking about. I mean, because we are actually manifestations of Mother Earth, water consciousness. If you see what I mean? Because we
yeah.
come from the water. I mean, well, I mean, you think about it. The first animals were just like tiny little sort of microbes and stuff in the sea, and then they gradually started mutating and frogs and blah 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 blah, and then eventually, well, politicians first, and then more advanced life forms afterwards. No, but you know what I mean? Um, yeah. So I believe in evolution in terms of that, but it's the driving force behind it. I mean, look, basically, our creator is Mother Earth. Like that. It's not really that. We're all sort of thinking
But
this
then, like,
God is
who's
this.
Mother Earth's creator, and where does that consciousness come from?
Well, oh yeah, no, I mean, it doesn't really answer the question. It just puts it back a bit. No, but
All
I mean,
right.
you see a lot. No, but there's a lot of stuff in the Bible that's actually ancient Egyptian wisdom. Like, for instance, the sun is there, and a bit of the sun flew off. Probably was a huge explosion, flew off, and that became the Earth. It's spinning and gradually attracting things towards it, and that became the Earth. So, in other words, Adam gives his rib and makes Eve. Is
Hmm.
actually the sun making the Earth, and then they've got this balance. It's like the sun is masculine energy and the Earth is female, and basically, she's giving him all life, and he's giving her, you know, light and warmth. So it's like it's
Yeah.
male female energy. So it's ancient Egyptian wisdom, but sort of put into this sort of Adam gives his rib. Amazingly, a man seems to give birth to a woman, which is quite the one and only time that seems to. Well, of course, it can happen nowadays, but I mean, in those days, like it's just all. And then Eve ate an apple, and then the whole world fell into sin, which is another load. That's another thing that pissed me off. I thought, well, why shouldn't she eat an apple? Like, don't make such nice apples if you don't want to eat them. And it just seemed a really good way of demonizing women from the start. So that I think Eve was right to eat the apple. So I'm an Evite. So so and
Well, I mean, that
and
shows what it
even
is, the whole transference of ideas over time. Like, these
yeah,
ideas just didn't come into existence right away. Like, they've been around, they were around for thousands and thousands of years before the Bible was ever written.
yeah.
And I think that that's like the whole point of it, right? Like, understanding that, like, you might lose the origin point of where all these ideas came from, but to be able to trace some of them, totally, you can find in ancient Egypt. You can
Well, the
find
other
all
thing
these
is though,
things.
John, I think we're actually if every atom is multidimensional energy, well, we're made out of atoms, so we are multidimensional. So in other words, my spirit exists outside space and time, but it is connected to me through the pineal gland. But it's like it's just that your body isn't all there is to you, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
Even scientifically, even science. Let's just talk science, and since everyone wants to talk science or believe in science, and yeah, so it's a really very advanced understanding of quantum physics, but I'm not going to claim that I understand that. I just sort of understand a little bit about it, or I try and get the basis of it.
Do you think
But
people back in, like, Jesus and Mary Magdalene's time, like, their consciousness was different and their ability to, like, receive these ideas was any different than we are now?
well,
Like,
no,
maybe
if
they
you
were
read
more
the,
open to it, or that, like, nowadays it's harder to get through, or have
it's
we
a very good
ascended in
question,
certain
Jordan. Because
ways?
I've often thought about this. Like, even if you went back 200, if we went back 200 years and we had this conversation, by carrier pigeon, no, but I mean, if we had this conversation and I told
Written
you
in the
about the
moon.
internet, you would think I'm a complete nutmer. You just go, oh, what? You get a piece, and then you could talk to someone, 2,000 miles away. Oh, it's rubbish. I don't want to hear all that sort of rubbish. So I mean, um, and this is the reason, though, why these women have been so controversial, because what they were actually talking about was very, very advanced, and people just weren't ready to even understand it. So Da Vinci knew a great psychic, and he asked her questions about what futuristic things were going to look like, and then he drew
Hmm.
them. And then everyone goes, "Oh my God, he's the most amazing genius." Actually, the genius was her. It was Lisa de Garandini. I mean, he was just, there were experiments in time. if you want to prove psychic ability, then get a psychic to say something and then see whether it comes true. So, I mean, that's what he was doing.
So he was just
You know,
open to experimenting with these
he was,
ideas.
but all the scientists should be open to understanding female psychic stuff. You know, why is it? It's always dismissed. You know, because there's a whole political agenda behind it. Because we're not supposed to know. This is the other thing I realised, that the elites know this stuff that we're not allowed to know. So if you understand that death
Mm.
is nothing to fear, then you know it's not like, you know. But the
Then there's
basis
no
of
ticking clock to
Freemason,
bye.
yeah, basis of
It's like,
Freemasonry is reincarnation. You know, so I'm trying to sort of bring it back into people's consciousness. You know, look, I'm only just a tiny, minuscule cog in the thing, but I mean, this is what I'm trying to do. So, you know, and so, yeah, so that's it really.
well, so how do you go
And
about it? Like, was it with your music, or is it? I mean, you have your like your mini documentaries that you've been posting when you travel all around and
yeah,
stuff. Is it through
well, I
that
met this.
exchange that you're able to get to people a little bit more, or is it difficult to get these ideas
Well, no,
out?
because now a lot of women know that I'm into all this stuff, and then I got a lot of women ringing, sort of bringing me up and contacting me and sort of saying, "Look, actually, look, you know, it's funny you said that, but I do actually have very vivid dreams, and I seem to know what's going to happen. And then sometimes I can see auras around people, and I hear these voices, and I sort of go, oh, you know, but my husband he really, I can't tell him, he'll go mad, you know. And I go,
Mm.
just tell him from me, there's nothing wrong with you, you know, you just got ability, it's brilliant, sort of thing, you know. So, um,
Captain.
yeah, you know. And then I mean, there was an occasion in I was in Edinburgh, and I saw this girl in the park, and I suddenly felt she was a great psychic. Anyway, I thought, oh God, I can't say anything. I mean, she's only about 7, and I just thought, I can't say anything. This is going to go so badly wrong. So anyway, I walked away from her, and then I suddenly sort of heard this help thing. So I thought, oh God. So I go back and I speak to her mum, and I said, look, does your daughter ever hear voices and sort of like, is stuff going on? And she went, who are you? And I said, oh, no, I just sort of had this sudden feeling, you know. And she went, because I may call the police on you. She said, because you're from the hospital and you're not supposed to be talking about this, you know. And I'm going,
What?
what are you talking about? And she said, well, she's been hearing these voices and stuff, and she's going to go into the hospital, and then they're going to stop the voices. They're going to give her very heavy psychiatric drugs, you know. And I was going, oh no. Okay. So then I calmed her mum down
Wow.
and told her, yeah, and I told her I was really interested in psychic stuff. And then I said, look, you know, there may be nothing wrong with her. She may just be very psychic, and she doesn't know who to talk to. And so, and you're telling her to, you know, because her mother was saying, look, tell the voices to go away. You do not want to listen to them, you know. So her daughter was getting all really upset and everything.
Right.
But anyway, it had an amazing end, this story, because obviously I couldn't actually ever speak to the girl because, you know, like she's only 7 or something. And but anyway, I was in touch with her mum, and her mum said, okay, we've decided she's not going to hospital, and I'm going to
Oh
cool off
wow.
about it. Yeah, I'm going to cool off about it, and I was just going to say to her, you know, if you hear voices and they're not saying anything bad, and you're happy with it, you've got your friends, and you carry on. And anyway, then years later, like it must be about 15 years later, I was just about to do this concert in Edinburgh. Anyway, this amazing looking girl came up to me and she said, I want to talk to you. And I said, oh, yeah, what about? And she said, I'm that girl in the playground. Anyway, she turned out to be one of Scotland's top actresses now. So like,
Really?
yeah. So, but you know, but see and then I went to the hospital and I actually said, look, I've had this sort of thing going, you know, you might have other people here that have actually got psychic talent that's been completely misunderstood. But you see, they didn't want to know. Because what I didn't realize then is that, you know, hospitals have a protocol, and if a daughter's hearing voices, then they're psychotic, and then they've got to go on this and that, you know. So I
Hmm.
mean, but I'm not saying that anyone hears voices, you know, and you know, it can be a sign of psychosis, and I'm not saying it, you know. But I said to her, what are the voices actually saying? What were
Yeah,
they
did she
saying? And she
share
said,
anything? Like,
yeah, she did. Yeah. Because when I spoke to her, you know, because then we met after this concert. I
cool.
said, what are the voices are saying? She said, oh, they're 2 Navajo Indians. And they're like down. I look up and it's on, and they've been talking to me about breathing. And I said, what do you think it's about? I said, oh, no, they're just telling you to like, if you do yogic breathing, then your own psychic power will increase. You know, I said, is that what they're saying? And she goes, yeah, that's what they're saying. You know, so I mean, they was just trying to help her. They weren't nasty at all.
Were they so they were like spirit guides that were
Yeah,
speaking with her
spirit
for some
guides, sort of
reason?
I think they were sort of Navajo Indian. She said the one that was a man and a woman, and they're Navajo Indian sort of thing, you know. But
You met
yeah, and
someone from 15 years previous in Edinburgh who was channeling Navajo Native
well, no,
American.
I didn't. Well, that's what she said later on. I mean,
Amazing.
I didn't say one word to her because I just thought, you know, this could go very wrong. But I
Right.
mean, it almost did go wrong speaking to her mother, but actually her mother eventually was cool about it. And then now she's all sort of like, my daughter's psychic, it's brilliant, sort of thing. So it's things like that,
Well, it seems like there's so much fear behind it though.
I
Like
think it's because
when
it's the
people don't know
unknown and
about
it's
it.
not, and it's also very, like, for instance, supposing you had two psychics in this room. I mean, they might say there's different things going on. And like one might say, oh, there's a spirit over there. Another one might say there's something over here. But it doesn't mean that either of them's wrong. What it could be is that they're latching on to different time zones. You know what I mean? In other words, like, and you've got to really understand what they're experiencing to I mean, like I met another great psychic actually recently, and she was describing what she sees is like if she's looking at you, she'll see a series of images, and then she has to translate what those images mean, sort of thing. So with me,
Oh,
I sat down with her, and
that's a
she
different way
said,
to channel. That's cool.
"Well, actually, I don't know if you've seen a guy called Matt Fraser. He's a fantastic psychic. I mean, he's an
That's
American guy,
familiar.
and he describes it exactly like that. Like, he sees someone and he knows they're there, and then they'll show him a series of images, and then he has to, and he knows, oh, that's the shorthand for kidney disease, so she says she's shown a series of. So when I first met her, and this is a good example of how if you don't know what you're talking about, it can go wrong. Like, we sat on this bench and she said to me, oh, well, what's this brain injury you've had? Oh, you could have died. You had a really bad brain injury. And I didn't have a brain injury. And I said to her, no. I said, where? And she went here. She went, it's right here. And I said, well, I haven't had a brain injury. She said, yes, you have. So I'm sort of sitting,
Hmm.
and then I said, oh, hang on, wait a minute. I said, yeah, I was with my son and I banged my leg on a sort of metal pole, and I went straight over and smashed my head on the concrete. And I was conscious all the way through. So I remember it. I remember it was like hearing a sort of skull hitting the floor. I mean, I remember it was,
What?
and my son thought I had died because he said it was so, and then as I was saying this, she's going, oh yeah, yeah, okay, yeah, no, you should have died, but your brain was held up because it wasn't your time. So in other words, like she just said she was shown brain injury, blah 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 blah, and she was translating it in that. But she said it's actually more complicated than that. But there was no ifs and buts. She didn't go, oh, maybe I've got that wrong. She said, oh, no, you have, you know. So on my eye came up like it was all, like I had two black eyes and like a massive bump, and it was quite a bad injury. But
Oh.
I didn't get any brain damage because I didn't, or maybe I did, but I didn't go unconscious and I didn't feel faint or anything. So that's why I said to her I hadn't had one. But I think but what I'm trying to say is she's been shown images and then she has to translate what's been said, and she says sometimes there can be difficulties with that. But yeah, she was quite funny because she said to me that, and in fact, it wasn't her I met her through someone else, and they said that they'd been with her outside a pub, and she was with quite a lot of other psychic girls as she was training and stuff. And there was this bloke sort of standing there, and he sort of turned around to it. They were all the girls were talking. He went, "All that psychic stuff, it's a load of shit, it's a load of crap," like that. And this girl lost her temper, and she went, your brother is called Andrew and he died in a motorbike accident. And he said, have some respect, like that. And this bloke nearly fainted on the spot. And then she went, oh God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have done that. I
Oh
shouldn't
my
have done that.
gosh.
I lost it. I shouldn't have done that. I'm so sorry. Anyway, then this bloke sort of started crying. She said, oh, come over here. Anyway, and then he went for loads of sessions with her. And but I know it was
Oh
mind blowing.
my-
So that's how good she is. That's how good she is. And so I know loads of psychics now, but I mean the one I studied with in America is absolutely out of the ballpark.
So is she the one that?
But it's not just sorry.
No, I was gonna say, is she the one that sent you on the, or gave you the ideas of the quest to Iceland?
Yeah,
Because like
yeah.
we got to hear that story,
Oh God. Well, from the
and
other
that'll tie
side.
into the Mary Magdalene stuff. That it's just so
Well, can I
fascinating.
just tell you? Oh, you mentioned Mary Magdalene. Well, okay, the
Yeah.
resurrection. The resurrection is quite simple. Like after he died, probably 2 or 3 weeks. I can't put a time on it exactly, but when he was ready, she went into a trance and he spoke to his disciples through a psychic. It's not
Hmm.
actually that complicated. But if you take Mary Magdalene out of it and you called her a witch, and And it, although actually, if you look at the resurrection, Mary Magdalene is always in the middle of it. And at one point, he says to her, I think, even in the Bible as it is, says, "Don't try and touch me," and all that. So it's, but she's experiencing him from the spiritual realm. It's not that
Oh,
you
that's
say,
what
you
he
see what I mean?
represents then.
Yeah. So he wasn't. I mean, Christ himself wasn't saying, "Believe in me, and you will have everlasting life." He was saying, "Believe me, you are an everlasting being." You see what I mean? It's
So
like
does she
the words
represent
are almost identical, but
like is he the passing he's the one passing through the worlds, and like Mary his mother is the one who's the anchor here, but Mary Magdalene represents the spiritual of like the transference of where he's going, like she was
no,
the one that's in
no, I
communion with
think
him.
it's like people have often met each other over many lives, So I think I mean, he's the most advanced sort of Tibetan Buddhist master the world's ever known. So he is God's messenger in a way. I mean, if you want to put it like that, he is, I mean, the Son of God, But I mean, he is the most advanced spiritual being that there's ever been. So
How
I
did
mean,
he
okay,
get so
once.
advanced? How did he like outrank all
Oh
the,
no,
the Tibetan
no, I can't.
masters?
I
Or are
can't
they just
answer
up in
that.
the mountains and nobody really knows? Like,
Well, I think he's trained in Tibet probably over many lifetimes, before even coming to Bethlehem and that. See, the three wise men were just people from Tibet, because he said, "Look, I'm going to incarnate in this sort of area, so come and find me," And so, you know, it was probably more like 10 people, and there would have been a woman there, of course, the great psychic had been there. And shit, they would have found the incarnation of this great Buddhist master, and they would have said, like, "Look, we'll come back when he's 12, and you'll probably find he's so advanced, and he'll want to come with us." So
mm,
but they came back when he's 12 and he wanted to go with them. So they went back and then they trained him for 18 years in Ladukh. So like
oh,
when he comes back to Bethlehem, he's like very advanced spiritual master who can heal with his hands. And, people who didn't understand it would have been like, "Oh my God, this is. But I mean, it was
yeah, they just
incredible
understood
talent
they weren't
mixed
supposed
with
to know that.
incredible training. You know what I mean? It's not, um, it's not that other people aren't great with it as well, So it's like,
So
he wanted
does he
everyone's.
represent bringing like this God universe source energy to the people in that like masculine material way? Whereas Mary Magdalene didn't need to go on that journey, but she
Well,
was there in a different
the
way.
way, see, I think that those two have met each other over many incarnations. So, in other words, like Isis had a son called Horus, and I think that's Christ. And then Mary Magdalene is Isis, and Horus with John the Baptist. And then it goes right the way through to the modern. I mean, this is where it gets very controversial.
Well, that's
Don't
the
worry,
question.
I
What
don't.
so
It's
I
not me. It's not me, and I'm not claiming that, and it's not me. But I do know who I think it is. So and that's
getting bright.
hey.
It's getting
Well,
bright.
no.
What the heck is going on?
Well, no, because I sort of thought, well, hang on, if if they were reincarnated, then they wouldn't have suddenly stopped just because. But I realised they had to go underground, and then the female side had to go underground because it's too dangerous. So, for instance, Shakespeare and Anne Hathaway, that was John the Baptist and Isis. But so in other words, he was working on his plays with his wife, and everyone thinks, oh, there's a secret source, and it must be, Francis Bacon. It always has to be a man, of course, Francis Bacon or Lord Sainsbury to Watkins, whatever. But everyone overlooks the fact that his wife, why wouldn't it be his wife? And yeah, so they were. I think she was channeling some of it literally is divine, and I think some of it is, things they were devising together, and. So I mean, but you see, the Masons know about Shakespeare, so they often do Midsummer Night's Dream.
So is that what the whole
And
point is with like humanity, that we have to like that's why we find partners and stuff that
yeah,
complement our masculine and feminine energies so that they can
yeah,
guide
I think
us
so.
and
Yeah. So I think that
help us
just
move
because
in the right
it's not just
direction.
like Mary Magdalene and Christ meet each other, it's like it's going on with all of us. That's the whole point. It's going on with all of us. It's like we've all met people before, and we're all in soul groups, and it's it's the same for everybody. But someone as advanced as that is going to be in that kind of advanced soul group, if you know what I mean. Yeah. So well, since you're in America, I might as well. um, yeah, I believe in his last incarnation, he was John Coltrane. So
Oh
so he's
wow.
African American. Yeah, so he's
Why
African
is that?
American, which is a bit weird for a honky bloke to be saying that, but but maybe a honky bloke has to say it because it's not a race thing. You know what I mean? It's a
Yeah.
well, he didn't. I mean, if you think about everything from Christ's perspective. I mean, he would want to come back Afro American in 1925 because it was very, very hard, and he would have thought I want to lead Afro-Americans to the highest level of consciousness, through music, So, I mean, and he almost didn't make it himself. I mean, he found it's just so difficult, and he was addicted to heroin and in a shocking state. And, and in fact, I think he got thrown out of Miles Davis band at one point because he was just, completely gone. But actually then, Miles Davis is a very open-minded guy, and they both went to see a psychic together. And that's when John Coltrane realized, oh shit, wait a minute, I chose this, I chose this. I wanted to lead Afro-American people. I chose this. And so then he was off drugs within a week, never took any more again. And then he left us. His New Testament is basically a love supreme, which is actually the best description of God that anyone's ever come out with in the whole history of religion. I mean,
Is Coltrane the dude that you were channeling back when you were in school? That you always was Coltrane?
Oh no, I've
the
always
guy
loved.
you
No,
were
no.
channeling?
When I first heard John Coltrane, I had a massive spiritual experience, but I didn't know that's what it was. It was when I was 14. I remember where I was and everything, but I didn't realize it was anything to do with this, sort of thing. I only discovered all this stuff. Yeah, I mean, when I first heard Love Supreme, my whole body started shaking, and I was sort of sweating and sort of like, and I was just sort of like completely transfixed. But I didn't know actually that was a psychic event. I mean, because I didn't even know. I was only 14, and I was a horrible little sort of arrogant little twat sort of a bloke. So, but this thing just blew me completely away. And then, having been wanting to be a classical player, up until that point, suddenly I wanted to play jazz. And then I met your uncle, and he basically sort of showed me all this kind of like New York Herbie Hancock jazz things. And then I took up from there. So, as I say, your family's been very instrumental all the way down the line, So, yeah. So, yeah, that's his latest incarnation, I believe. So it's within our lifetimes, But you see, you got to remember.
So why doesn't he have the pull to go and find Mary Magdalene, like, and the Holy Grail and that kind of stuff? Like, why, or like, why didn't he, or why not? Like,
Yeah, but the Holy Grail.
Is it not
See, the thing
necessary?
is, no, because the Holy Grail is an understanding. It's a golden casket of knowledge within you, Jordan. Like the fact that you're eternal and you have all these past lives. In other words, like you can go and find golden cups and bits and bobs and ancient documents and stuff, and that's not the Grail. The Grail is an understanding. It's a self-realization, if you see what I mean. So, like when people go on about the Grail
of consciousness, and that it's...
yeah, that's the Grail. And when you understand death is nothing to fear, and that this is one life, and yeah.
So, do you know what I mean? So the Grail was just like what it represented.
Yeah, the Grail is this sort of golden thing, and it's gold. It's God's promise to us, and if you can just find this golden thing that's under Temple Mount or it's somewhere other, then you'll get this massive power, and it's going to be this. But actually, the power,
it's a very masculine thing of acknowledging.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing.
No,
absolutely right. With us blokes, it's always got to be, I found a Grail, and it's a casket, and you open it, and I did it, and it's actually that's once again, it's a typical it's typical bloke thing. Whereas actually, it's a realization, So I mean, so I can go off and find all sorts of ancient Egyptian stuff, and and still not find a Grail, or you can just sit in a room and you can find it. Actually, Mozart said that that's another great incarnation. So I mean, he said something like, you can possess me, but you don't own me, and you can give me away, but you don't, he gave us a Zoroastrian riddle, but it's all basically a knowledge. Like I've got the knowledge of reincarnation and I can give it to you, but I don't own it. So how can you give away something that you don't own? It's just a knowledge, So Mozart,
so like, how do you, like, in your own life, like when you got that understanding of that knowledge, that you are eternal and you are source, and that greatness is within you, were you always conscious of that, or were you only conscious of that in small pockets? And once you might have realized that, has that changed your perception of your existence?
Well, what I try and do now is just try and be as kind as I can to everyone as much as I can. Like I think it's really about kindness, and I don't always succeed, and I can be a terrible knobhead. But I just sort of mean, like, that's what I'm trying to do. Yeah. Love is a sort of, like love is very near to hate and this and that, but I mean, kindness is kind of like you either are or that's a kind of it. I mean, the Taliban don't act with kindness, so they're not acting in the name of Muhammad. They're doing their own sort of thing. And, anyone who does, so you've got to be, and kindness is really about understanding that someone else may have had very different life experiences, and you can't judge them because you just don't know what's made them like that. So, in other words, you just have to sort of show them kindness and hope that it changes them, And I find it does work, but sometimes it takes quite a long, like
Yeah.
Like someone will have a go at you, you just got to take it on the chin. Like, where's, you know, for instance, okay,
Like this has nothing to do
before,
with me. This is just an energy coming at
well,
me.
no, but before, I used to hold grudges against people, and I used to be incredibly nasty and aggressive.
Oh,
And I would like if someone pissed me off, I would hold it against them like for years, like 10 years, a grudge, and I'd be sort of constantly demeaning them, and now I just wouldn't.
Dave
I
Heath's
wouldn't even think
grudge.
like that. I would just think, oh, he's said something. He's being a bit of a knob. I'll whatever, and I'll just carry on. So it did make a massive difference to me, yeah. And I was always very nasty about other composers and other musicians and trying to get them better. And I'm going to prove to him that, it was all like that.
Oh, I see.
But I'm really not like that. I just think we're all on our own paths, and what other people are doing in music and what they're doing in life is it's just nothing. It's not a competition, and it's nothing to do with me. You know what I mean? It's like I'm just doing my thing, and not to even think about what other people are doing, unless you love it. I mean, there's a young guy who's really talented musician called Jacob Collier. I mean, I like to think that I know quite a lot about harmony and stuff, but this is a guy I don't even know what he's doing. It's like, God, So I mean, but I don't feel jealous of Jacob. I sort of think it's great that someone's out there. It's not about. We're all sort of one consciousness. So like the idea of being jealous of someone else is like almost like you're not getting what's going on.
Right.
So so it did make a massive difference to me. But I guess you'd have to ask other people around me whether that's true, or whether I'm just fantasizing about my own, you know.
Well, I
But
mean,
I
did it change
definitely I
your
don't
in
hold grudges. I don't hold grudges anymore, as I used to.
did it change
So
your inner dialogue with yourself though? Because you said talking about being kind to other people. Were you not kind to yourself in the past, where you can see the value to how that feels, or were you holding
I could be
judgments
really
against
nasty.
yourself?
I'd be really. I could be a nasty bit of work. But because I get this incredible anger sort of thing. But actually, a lot of the anger was all this stuff going on in my subconscious mind and not understanding it. Whereas now I get it. So
Mm.
like for
Did you
instance, I
find
mean,
did
okay,
it rise to the
I was in a
surface? Like, did you get to understand some of that? Like, where that
well,
anger got
yeah. I
how it got
mean,
buried?
when I was on my when I was on my quest sort of thing, before I met the psychic, I would go into churches and I'd go into bookstores and I would take all the Bibles and I'd start putting them under fiction, and then I would then I
Jeez.
went to this massive service and in Edinburgh Cathedral, and anyway the sort of the bloke came over from Ireland and he was like, the Vicar de Quincy de Lingdy Blondy Blondy. And anyway, the whole place was full and and he started sort of basically having a go at the English. And I just thought, I'm not listening to this stuff in the church. And I just went, you're talking bollocks like that sort of thing. It was completely volcanic. I started swearing at him really loud. Anyway, they got sort of thrown out of the church. And it was that sort of thing. Whereas now, for instance, if someone was in the church talking, I would just sort of think, I'll just wait till the bark comes on at the end and just sort of. So, I mean, that's another great incarnation, by the way. So I think Christ's idea was, look, the churches have sort of taken his kind of original teaching and sort of made a bit of a mess of it. But, a lot of good stuff did come through. But rather than go back and fight with everybody about it, his idea was, okay, I'll go into the church and I'll create some amazing music so people get the feeling there is a God, but it's coming from the organ. So, Bach was an incarnation of John the Baptist and that. So, like,
That's cool.
so when you hear Bach, it's actually beyond our understanding. It's so advanced and sort of extraordinary. So yeah, if you're just listing incarnation, it's Bach, Mozart, Schubert. That's all one character. But obviously, each incarnation come back, you're slightly different because I mean, you've got different parents, you've got different upbringing and stuff. But I mean, it's that incredible talent. I mean, they reckon that
What is
even
it
if you
about that music? Because I mean, I remember having a little conversation with you and Nadia about how like Bach is the closest thing to God that you
yeah,
can hear in music. Like, but like, what is that? Like,
well,
how does it resonate in that way?
okay. All there is at a quantum level is vibrating, multidimensional vibrating energy. Okay. So if you start manipulating that vibrational energy, it's the best description really of what heaven's like, if you know what I mean. Because it's like if you listen to
Oh,
but you know what I mean, if you listen to basically in music, like the fundamental tone is like representative of God. So like the bass note is kind of like, well, even in Indian music, well, I don't mean even in Indian music, you just get the tone and then you get a scale on top of it, like the raga. And but it's almost like the bass tone represents universal consciousness, and then it's our relationship and our resolution to the eternal, to the tonic, to the bass note, which is like creating the great music, And obviously, then you start moving the tonic around and all sorts of things. But I mean, so when you listen to Bach, what he's doing is he's clashing with the fundamentals and then resolving them. So he always ends in the major, because the
Mm.
major chord is like all the atoms are vibrating in harmony. But a minor chord, well, if you
Oh,
work with rock
like all of the
musicians,
distance that he allows to permeate and
yeah,
like
because
coalesce in certain ways.
because everything in the major chord is on the harmonic series right the way up. So it's
Mhm.
all vibrating in harmony. But when you play a minor chord, the reason why it sounds sad is because that note is not is not is there's a clash there. So when you speak to rock musicians who can't read music or something, they'll sort of go, "Oh, I want a sad E, I want happy E and happy E, sad E." Well, that just means minor, but it's sad because it's not resonated. It's not. There's a clash in the harmonics, which and so
Oh,
like
that's
you're sort of
interesting.
resolving them into the. So I mean, someone like Bach. I mean, it's really weird if you, being a musician trying to understand Bach, because you literally can't. It's just so he just does these turns you're not expecting, and then it turns again, and it's like a sort of kaleidoscope of harmonies and stuff, and it's unbelievable.
I mean,
It's
it
unbelievable.
speaks to like the complexity of existence when you think of like
Yeah,
all the different pedals and all the different chords and all the things that are happening at the same time at the
yeah,
organ. And he was
yeah,
able to like see all that or at least guide it. And I think
yeah.
to me it speaks to the complexity of just living in that like the more you like you think like maybe when you're young, but you think like you figured everything out and you know how everything's gonna work, and then the older you get and the more you learn, the more you think like, wow, I don't really know anything of how it works. I have hints and there's whispers of everything, but there's so
but
much that can be comprehended, but it feels different when you're at a higher vibration of something.
but I've heard so many people say they go into a church and they hear the Bible and they're not really sure, exactly what it means, but they said then you hear Bach and you think, oh yeah, there is a God sort of thing, So I think that was
Right.
his idea. I think that was his idea, rather than being in conflict with the church, because you got to remember he's the sort of prince of the light. I mean, and highly intelligent and highly original. The idea of coming back, and you see these people on the net who think they're Jesus and Mary Magdalene and all that sort of stuff. I mean, the actual guy is massively advanced, so he wouldn't come back and try and upset Christians with, that, I guess that's more my role. But I mean, he would come back and try and make, okay, you've made these beautiful churches, so I'll do something beautiful in your church. That would have been his sort of attitude. And you can't ask for more than that. So now Mozart, like his final opera, was all about this, female energy, and the joy of Isis will be accorded to you. So he was
Well, wait,
he
what
was
was the last
desperate.
opera?
Magic Flute,
Yeah, okay.
and he was, so that was Christ himself, and he was like wanted people to understand the female side. So he was going, the joy of Isis will be accorded to you. So he was yeah. So he wanted the world to understand the teachings of Isis, which were reincarnation. So
But he had a lot of female leads in a lot of his other operas. Was it something that there was more because it became more populist at the end that he was able to not have to go through,
um well, no,
all the
he
power
wanted. I
stripping to
mean,
get
no, because
that?
this is sort of his message to the world. If you see what I mean, like we should all become friends, because we're all just eternal manifestations of Mother Earth consciousness, and which is what Isis taught. So when he says the joy of Isis, that's what he means.
Yeah.
So it's really studying what the original Isis said, but she just said the same as Mary Magdalene, the same as all the great psychic, and the same as most women. If you actually ask them and say you won't laugh and you won't, and most women know this stuff. I bet you any woman listen to this, she goes, "Oh yeah, actually, sort of thing." I bet. I bet.
Guys talking
Be
about
interesting
things
to
that women have
be
known.
interesting to ask. It'd be interesting to ask. But
Well, it's uplifting to know that it doesn't necessarily matter where in time you are. There are these beacons that are looking for these higher vibrations that are looking for this to communicate these ideas. Like they
yeah,
are
yeah,
around.
yeah. So
It's just
I'm not doing anything new. I'm just sort of like
hyped about
just
it.
trying to sort of do my, trying to do it in my own way, like films on the net and all that sort of stuff. What I tried to do with my films on the net was just to quote. exactly what she'd said to me, word for word, and then let people come to their own conclusion about what they thought. So, and that's actually one of them has been, gone really well because a lot of people find it really interesting, but it's almost like I want people to sort of experience what I experienced, then go and do their own thing. I'm not trying
Yeah.
to, I'm not a guru type. I'm not a sort of like, you know,
Well, it
I'm
seems
just
like
very
bringing
inquisitive.
different music to people, and like
Yeah.
I've heard like all the stories of you like when you were playing the flute and like in college and you were trying all these different things and you were like fusing, Coltrane or just like Hendrix and bringing them into all the classical places and being irreverent
Well,
in that
Hendrix
way.
was another
That's
one. I
so
mean,
cool.
he's a great psychic. A lot of great musicians are. I mean, I was thinking about Bob Marley the other day. If you watch Bob Marley, like often he's dancing and he starts turning. And so he was probably in previous lives a Sufi kind of thing, like, a spinning Sufi. Now
Sure.
he wouldn't necessarily have remembered that, but it was almost like instinctively he was starting to turn, sort of thing. So look,
That's
that
cool.
was just one thing occurred to me, but he's very advanced, amazing guy,
I
And
heard Hendrix came on yesterday or the day before, and it's just I haven't heard him in his music in a while, but it just hit me.
what was it?
Oh, Hey Joe.
Oh yeah.
It just hit me, and I was like, why have I not been listening to Hendrix in a long time? Unbelievable.
Well,
Full
do you
body
know that?
experience.
Oh, incredible. And also, what's interesting about him is that he was so sort of massive on stage personality and everything. But actually, when you hear him interviewed, he's incredibly sort of
Soft
quiet and
spoken.
sort of well spoken and quiet and sort of like, oh, I'm not the best guitarist in the world. I just play the guitar and I'm just sitting here. And, it's incredible guy. I love to have met Hendrix. But,
So
yeah.
here's my question. If you were learning all about this, about seeing the God energy within you and seeing how to bring that out in the world and how to share that
Mm,
and stuff, and that these physical, anchors and icons of the Holy Grail and that kind of stuff
right.
aren't need to be sought. What was the inspiration and passion behind the Iceland adventure?
Well, no, I was just,
Was that earlier in the journey when you
no,
felt that you
it
needed
was
to
quite
find
late
it? Oh, it
when I
was
was
later.
talking. Yeah, well, yeah, and she didn't say this to me. And as we got to know each other better and better, and like my relationship with the other side became like there was quite a lot of laughing going on because I got into sort of um, they said to me, oh, they wanted me. They told me about this guy that was looking for something in Iceland. That was looking for ancient documents in Iceland, and they said, oh, he's got two G's in his name, and oh, you'll find him. He's looking for the Holy Grail. Or something. So being me, I sort of immediately got on the net and I found this guy Giancarlo Giannazza, and I just thought, what is this about? But then I thought, well, they wouldn't have said, you know, to me to go to Iceland if it wasn't an interesting thing. So I thought, okay, they know what they're doing, So
Wait, they meaning like the guys
yeah, so
like from
higher dimensions know
your
what they're
team,
doing.
like
So yeah,
yeah,
so
they needed you to hear
I
this.
sort of thought, okay, so I didn't want to approach this bloke sort of saying a psychic sent to me because I just thought that couldn't go credit. By this point, I've learned a bit of common sense and realised you just can't say stuff like that. So I just
You have
said
to
I've
find
seen
different
this.
angles and
Yeah, so I just
yeah.
said, oh, I've seen your quest on the net, and I'm just really interested in in this stuff. And he said,
Good for
oh well,
you.
come over to Italy and have a chat. So I went over and I was
Okay.
just talking to.
I
So
didn't
I
know
was just
this.
talking.
You
Oh
just
yeah, so I'm just talking to him and his wife, and he goes, "Oh, so
wait,
how
where
did
in
you hear
Italy
about
is he? Like what city?
Monza?" So and I'm talking to him, and we're having a pizza outside. It was really nice, And I thought, I'm gonna have to tell him who's. He said, "Well, did someone send you here, or did you sort of like, did someone tell you about the quest?" And I sort of thought, "Oh well, yeah,
By the way.
I said, I know this incredible psychic and spirits from higher dimensions thought it'd be a good idea. And anyway, he almost choked. He almost choked on his pizza, and he sort of, he looked at his wife like, "Oh, we've got a right nutter," So then he sort of calmed down. He said, "Well, I need all the help I can get." So he said, "Why don't you come along?" So,
That's cool. Okay.
so yeah, so that was cool. But then I turned up. But he's by this point got a whole team there. There's about 10 of them, and they'd obviously been told, "Oh, I'm this sort of nutball bloke,
Wait, so what's
and
their passion for doing it?
well, they got
And what are they
he
actually
read
looking for at this point? Like, do they know what they're looking for
well
documents?
he's Italian, and he was reading the Divine Comedy by Dante's Divine Comedy, and he
Hmm.
said there's certain allusions to it, which if you read it in Italian, there are certain allusions to Iceland, rhymings and different things. It's so
Oh,
complicated, I don't even understand it. But then he said, and he was looking for the throne of Beatrice, and Beatrice Portinari. Well, see, once again, Beatrice Portinari was one of these great psychics. So like Dante, and that's
okay.
who. But anyway,
That's
so
who
I,
he was
I
hanging out
already
with.
knew that. I already knew that. I already knew the whole Dante Divine Comedy is all about psychic stuff, and Mother Earth and Virgin Mary, Mother Earth, and all this sort of stuff. Um, so anyway, I turn up, and he's looking down by the river. And he was looking down by the river, and I sort of thought, there's not going to be anything buried down there. So I got talking to this guy from the Knights Templar, who I'd never met before, and his whole team thought I was just a bit of a nutball. Which, I mean, maybe I am, but there was sort of a lot of tension between me and them. It was like, this sort of complete raving lunatics turned up. What are we going to
Wait. The
do? But
Knights
anyway,
Templar guys, are they
well, no, the Knights
the
Templar
other
guy who
10
actually no, because
Italians?
I got to speak to him, and I thought he was just going to think, oh, he's a nutball. But then it turned out that he was actually all into the same thing. He was into the Cathars and everything. And I actually thought this is a bit weird. I mean, they're both into the Cathars and they're both into all this same stuff. Anyway, I sort of got on with him really well, and we sort of and and what happened was I said, well, there's not going to be anything down there, like it's near the river. He said, no, I don't think so. So he said, and then I looked and there was this hill nearby, and I said, oh, maybe we should go up there. And then he sort of went, yeah, all wisdom is kept at the top of the mountain, like a sort of Buddhist master, and having a laugh about it. So we walk up there.
And it's
And when I
also the
stood
middle
up,
of winter. That's the other thing,
no,
right?
no, no, it's summer. No, it's summer. So I
Oh,
mean,
it's
yeah,
summer. Okay.
in the winter, it's under about 10 foot of snow. You can't get anywhere near, you
I
can't
was
get in the
gonna
whole
say, how did
area.
you do any of this?
It's the middle of Iceland.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I stood on this hill, and when I stood on this hill, I suddenly had this sort of like, it was so powerful that my whole body was shaking, and I was sort of like crying, and and
Really?
it felt like the whole energy of the whole Mother Earth had come up through this sort of place and sort of blown my head off. Anyway, this guy I was
Wow.
with, Thorin, was so worried about me. He was ringing for an air ambulance because he thought I'd had a heart attack. See, so I was trying to sort of say, no, I was going, no, 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 don't worry. Oh, okay, it's just blowing my head up. And then I looked at what I was looking at, and I suddenly realized that I was looking at the background to the Mona Lisa. There are two rivers like that. And
Oh.
I was standing at the place because she's pointing subtly down. I was standing at the place that he had drawn. But you see, now I was looking for documents. This is what I thought I was looking for. I thought I wasn't really looking for the Holy Grail. That's just I was looking for an original copy of Mary Magdalene Gospel. That's what I was looking
Oh,
for.
right, right, right.
So then I would go back to the psychic, and I would sort of say, I told her what happened. She said, oh, yeah, that's the right place, and she said, but you've got to understand there are tunnels. So I went back and I sort of thought, oh, there are tunnels. Right. Okay. So now to you or me, that sounds like, there's obviously a tunnel. She said it's underneath the central where I'd had that experience, but she said there's not. So I started looking for, okay, so there must be sort of a tunnel and you go through to a central area. So she said, and I said, well, what angle is the tunnel at then? And she would go, well, it's to do with Venus. And I go, well, what time though? Because Venus is moving all the time, I said, well, what time? She said, oh, it's to do with Venus when you're there. And I'm going, but I'm there, like 6 hours at a time. And she said, it's, Venus will open the doorway. And so I was thinking, well, okay. So anyway, I'll go out there. And
Well,
I
that's
was
kind of nice. I
completely,
mean, that makes sense. I mean, it's the feminine energy to a T.
well, I just was being a bloke, I was thinking, okay, there's a tunnel and it leads to central bit, because I can't, and I can't stop being a bloke. So then next year I went out and I was sure I found the tunnel. So, they put the ground radar on it and it did look like there was a tunnel under there and everyone was super excited. Oh, this madman, it turned out, Anyway, it turned out it wasn't the
Wait, what do you mean,
tunnel. It
like the
was
radar? It's like they had.
no, because they've got ground penetrating radar. So you put the radar over and you could see what's in the
Oh, so these
ground.
guys like brought equipment and stuff.
Oh, they've got, oh no, this is really advanced stuff. Oh, they've got sort of like, and this guy's been looking there since 2020. I mean, I'm a new boy. He's been looking since 2002. He's been looking for 22 years, you know.
Oh, so this
I'm
is like
actually,
a huge initiative.
oh, a massive initiative, yeah. And
Are they still going out there to look for stuff?
yeah, I'm going out there in 3 weeks, in a week's time. But I
Oh,
mean,
really?
but when I come to, I'll come to that. But I mean,
Oh man, we
so
gotta
anyway,
make a
so then the
live
next year, so then
Advent Calls, guys.
this went on for 6 years, right? With me, like he was looking in a different place. It wasn't just all for me. Now he's looking at a different place. I was trying to find this ripping tunnel. So every time I go back, and then there would be a different answer, and then eventually in 2018. I was so pissed off at this point. My whole family was going mad. You can't be going back to Iceland again. I've got to find out what this is about. This is about something massive, but I don't know what it's about. So, as if I could just find this Mary Magdalene gospel, then it's all over, sort of thing. So, then I it was 2018, and Giancarlo had to go off in one car, and the other lot had to go off in another car. So it was just, they said, look, we'll come back and get you. By this point, I wasn't sure whether they were going to come back and get me because the atmosphere had got so bad. And I was just this sort of, by this point, having been a bit of a hero for a while, I was now this complete sort of, and it was just me and this hill. And I just thought, I was so pissed off. And I was walking around the hill, and there's no one near me for about 5 miles, because it's in the middle of Iceland. There's no road there or anything. And I was just
Like, did they
pacing.
desert me, or are they like,
Hey?
what is this? Did
No,
they
I was
actually
just
desert
walking
you?
around. No, I was just walking around talking to myself, going, fuck this, fuck this, fuck this, sort of thing. And then I thought, right, okay, I'm going to go. I'm going to go, and I'm never coming back. I actually spoke to them. I said, I'm going to go, and I'm never coming back. If this is some sort of joke, I was like that. And so then I thought, actually, I'm going to just ask the hill one more time. So I sort of sat in a kind of meditation position, and I sat there. I said, what is this all about?
That's
Everybody
smart.
hates me, that sort of thing. And then I stood up and I walked away. And then as I looked around one more time, and then I looked back, and then I heard this voice. It was like, I am the point of all creation. And I'm sort of thinking, fucking hell. She's not talking about, she's talking about lava tunnels. I suddenly realized, oh my God, this is something to do with the structure of the whole earth. This isn't to do with
Oh,
like
that's interesting.
even books or anything. But even having said that, Jordan, I mean, I still didn't know, like, I mean, okay, there's lots of I knew this was the top of a volcano, what we're on, but there's lots of volcanoes in Iceland, and so anyway, then I went to Edinburgh to do a show with a friend of mine, and I'd completely forgotten. This is talking about coincidence. I'd completely forgotten that her husband was a geological expert. So he had been teasing me. He said, "Oh, have you found the Holy Grail yet?" And all that. So I said, "No, but I think I know what this is about." And he had all these maps of Iceland, because he had been to Oxford University,
Yeah.
and he got his map out and he said, "Okay, well, look, where is this place?" And I showed him, and he went, "Oh my God!" He said, "That is right where the Mid-Atlantic Ridge goes. It goes right up through Iceland, then it turns right." And he said,
Oh,
at a right angle. And he said, "That place that you've shown, that's right where the Mid-Atlantic Ridge probably started." So, and the Mid-Atlantic Ridge basically, if you think of Mother Earth as a woman, it splits the whole of Mother Earth down the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. I mean, there's a series of volcanoes underwater that go right the way down.
yeah.
And so I thought, oh
Huh.
my God, this is like the birthplace of all life. And then I started reading. Darwin had this theory that life began underwater near volcanoes, and I realized that what I'd been sent there to find was not this hill;
Oh,
it's what was going on 2 miles beneath the
beneath
freaking
it.
hill. So there were tunnels, but they were lava tunnels, like half a mile wide, and sort of like and then so what I now think is that
Well, and
once
that makes
upon a
sense with the
time.
whole Venus thing because it is the birth from the sea.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. So, no, but no, see, the reason why she wasn't answering the question is because what she was saying is that the goddess star would open my doorway of perception, not some doorway in the hill. Do you know what I mean? It was like it's a sort of female way of talking about being a bloke, and I was just taking
Right.
everything literally. So she was saying,
Like
when
you didn't
I'm
even
there,
have to go there.
Venus would open the third eye of my understanding, which is exactly what it felt like. So that initial experience I had on the hill was actually because Iceland's the deepest plume into the center of the earth on the whole planet. I mean, Hawaii is quite deep, but Iceland's deeper. So I think what it is that
Oh, so that's
once
what
upon
it
a
is.
time the whole earth was covered in water, and then there was a sort of Mother Earth, so almost like giving birth, like the mantle split, and it's split kind of at a right angle, and then there was a sort of small volcano, and then all life began underneath this particular volcano, and then like the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, it took 200 million years to split. But if this is the initiation point, it might be like a billion years before that. I mean, because you've got to get the split going right down the Mid-Atlantic before it even starts separating. So
So if
so
that
it's
is the
basically
point, then that's like
it's the Garden of Eden, but the Garden of Eden
right.
wasn't where Adam and Eve lived. It's like Mother Earth's point of creating all life, if you see what I mean, because it began in the sea.
Well, that
So
is the point of the masculine and the feminine coming together and merging
yeah.
and
So it
erupting
was
into the
like,
world.
but it's like us
The
men
birthplace.
had to find, because we've taken away female ability and female understanding. It's like us men had to go and find, Mother Earth's greatest point of creation. So it's like a sort of a balancing. We've got to rebalance it because the whole thing's out of balance. So
So
it was like,
why do you think that you like spirit or source or whatever sent you to that point to realize it? Like why couldn't it have been realized in other
because they
places?
probably know I'm a complete maniac. I mean, how many people would have actually done that? But I mean,
Like that's how to get through to you, like going on
yeah,
a quest and
because no one was
seeing
going to
the
stop me. No, because I also trust that I trust this woman. I trust the spirit world, and I just thought they haven't sent me here for nothing. There's something here, and I'm not getting it. I was in such turmoil because I couldn't work out what it was. And then I've realised that actually, then it's gone even further. Then I realised that the book of Revelation, the throne of God at the end of the book of Revelation, this is the throne of God because God is Mother Earth, if you see it, or not God is Mother Earth, but our
mm,
Creator is Mother Earth, and this
the
is her
church doesn't
greatest
like
point.
that.
Well, I mean, it should do because, like, yeah, well, it's not St Paul's Cathedral. It's like Mother Earth's quite capable of building her own throne, but it's like it's an understanding of, okay, this is the point of creation, and we are all manifestations of Mother Earth creation. So you don't actually have to go there and experience it unless you want to, but so I realized that it's the throne of God in the book of Revelation. And in fact, at one point, which has got everything to do with what's going on now, because Netanyahu is trying to build what he thinks is the throne of God or the third temple. He wants to build it in Temple Mount. But I think that the Queen of Sheba knew that it was in Iceland, so that the whole thing is a decoy. I mean, it's typical blokes, you see, like you read about a temple and it's got, 2 cubits here and a golden thing here, and this is here, and then blokes go, right, it's got 2 cubits here, you've got to, whereas actually she's going, yeah, but God is like Mother Earth, so it's her point, it's her throne, and she's quite capable of making her own throne, so I mean, so I think it's the real third temple of Sheba and Solomon. So it's sort of, in a funny way, it's got everything to do with what's going on now, because if people understood this stuff and that we're eternal, and that the Ark of the Covenant is actually an understanding within us. It's not something that someone's going to find, or anyone who's listening to this can find, or anyone could find it, or Buddhists have found it. And, so, and that was the original teaching of Christ as well. So it's really that his original teaching was much more amazing, and the Prophet Muhammad's teaching was much more advanced and amazing. But we can all understand it now. So that's really well. I'm trying to be inclusive. I'm not trying to be, oh, he's better than him, or he's better. It's not that.
Yeah.
I actually met this woman, and called Atia Khan, who's a Pakistani sort of Sufi. And when I first met her, I sort of sat down and I could hear loudly from the spirit world. They sort of said, "Tell her she's Fatima." Well, Fatima is the daughter of the Prophet Muhammad.
Yeah.
And I didn't. I mean, you see, this thing is, Jordan. These things happen. I can't sort of look at these things happen when it's important for them to happen. Like the
Yeah.
Iceland thing was important to happen. So then she looked, she sort of went white as a sheet, and she said, "Oh," she said, there's like 3 other Sufi masters have said the same thing to her since she was 6 years old."
Really?
So yeah, so once again, one of the things I'm really aiming for, I would love it if, for instance, the Saudi Arabians got a chance to speak to Atia, and that this whole thing that's going on could be cooled off, because actually they're doing this out of love for the Prophet Muhammad. But if the Prophet Muhammad was a great Tibetan Buddhist, he wouldn't have wanted us all fighting, and he would have
Did he
wanted us
go
to
the
get on with
route of
this.
Jesus and learn the
Well,
Tibetan
it's very difficult
teachings?
to know, because like the Quran was put together, I mean, 80 years after he lived. So, and I think that when you talk about very advanced alchemic teaching, I'm not even sure he would have taught it to everybody. I mean, he did teach it to Fatima, and he did teach it to his son-in-law Ali, I'm sure, which is the Shia understanding of Islam. But
Oh.
I think he may not have. People just may not have been ready to understand that you exist in multi dimensions, and you know what I mean. And so he may not have even. It may have been a sort of secret, and I don't really mean secret because he's trying to keep a secret. I mean more like it's not something that you teach on the street. See, I could go around the street sort of going, love each other and be as kind as you can and blah 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 blah. But if you start saying you're a multidimensional being who exists inside and outside space time as incarnation and spirit, and you have many, I mean, that's just like, oh, this poor bloke's suffering from some sort of terrible, you know what I mean? So you can't talk like that. And in fact, Buddhist masters, they won't tell you about reincarnation. You have to ask them sort of 3 times. You have to be really interested. So
I've found
yeah,
that.
so that's so I've got quite a long way with the ISA thing, but the Giancarlo is still looking for the books, and I do think there are books there. So I'm just going out to help him, but I'm not, I think all this Mother Earth thing is much more important. But yeah, if we can find documents as well, all the better. But documents aren't necessarily going to prove anything. Like there is a copy of Mary Magdalene Gospel, and but it's been completely ignored. People just go, "Oh, it's 400 years too late. I'm not interested in that." So these books don't, they don't.
Is it a complete?
Books aren't changing anything. It's a self-realization that's got to happen.
Is it like was her? Because there are parts of her gospel. Is it the whole thing?
No, there are parts of it.
Yeah. Why did so many get destroyed? They were destroyed on purpose then?
I think that it was. I
What do you
don't
imagine
think
they
the
were trying to
Romans knew what to
advocate?
make of it. I mean, like this is a woman that anoints Christ. Well, I was sort of saying that before. Like she's got the psychic power to know, oh, this is the incarnation sort of thing. But then, in a trance state, see, like because it's very high dimensions of speaking to you, they can speak to you in any language. So, if I went to them and spoken, because they're actually reading your mind. I've asked these sort of questions, actually reading your mind. They're not actually listening to the words, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
So they can speak back to you. So you could say she speaks in tongues, like she speaks in different languages. But then that comes down to Christians, like they'll sort of go, "Oh, he's speaking in tongues." You think, "Oh God, that's not it." You know what I mean? The Holy Spirit is from the female side, and she can speak to you in any language you speak to her in. But it's not like thing. But look, there have been many Christians, great people, and they do their own thing, and it's really not about like having a go at anyone like that. It's just the actual thing was much more exciting than much more extraordinary. So there's a whole female. Okay, this will make you laugh. There's a whole female side missing. So if you think of the Trinity as being like God, Christ, and Mary Magdalene, like male and female equal, and God. Well, if you think that what we're left with is at the moment we've got 2/3 of the teaching. So what's 2/3 in percentages?
Not the whole picture.
Well, okay. Well, what's a third in percentages?
Like 30%. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, 33.3%. Okay.
Yeah.
And so what are you left with at the moment? We've only got 66.6666. So the number of the beast is out of control male energy. And it's the male existing without the female side. So we're missing 33.3, which is eternal mind, body, spirit teachings. So you see, once again, the spirit world the spirit world talks in eternal numbers, like 33.3, 33, 66.66. So it's not, it's like the whole world.
And that's when they say he died too at 33.
Oh yeah. Hadn't thought of that. Maybe it'd be the 3rd month. So there's a third of the teaching missing. So what we're left with is kind of, well, you look what's going on in the world. It's all out of control male energy, isn't it? All sort of not getting, like, even when you listen to Klaus Schwab and these people, I mean, they want to sort of put us into computers, and so that download, and then you'll have a sort of computer avatar of Jordan Bianchi, and sort of like, I mean, it's like we've already got eternal life. You don't need to sort of make some sort of avatar. It's like a sort of baby version of the real thing. It's almost embarrassing. You don't need all that.
Why are we not able to grasp that? Why is this a lesson that, like, the ebbs and flows of
I
time keep
don't know.
learning, and we go back and we go
Well,
over
no, I
again?
suppose it's because I feel very honoured that the spirit world came through to me, And well, it comes through to a lot of people, but I feel very honoured, and I sort of feel like
But you embraced it,
if
you
if
acknowledged
if
it.
this is going to help people, even just ask questions and look into it themselves, and that's a job done.
Yeah.
And no, but the Mary Magdalene gospel is really interesting because no one unless you understand she's a channeler, it won't make any sense. So at one point she says she's speaking to the disciples, and there's quite a lot of arguments in the disciples, and I think that was because some of them are thinking, well, why does he listen to her? She's a nutball, like. But apparently, one day you'll be able to lift up something and speak to someone 100 miles an hour. She's bonkers, sort of thing. So I think even amongst the disciples, there was sort of like, is Mary Magdalene just nuts, or so, you know what I mean? But of course, she was just seeing things like into the future, and
Well, what was she
but if you
talking
read her
about that
gospel,
like yeah.
basically, Christ is speaking. It's the real resurrection. Christ is saying, she's asking where he is now. I could actually, wait a minute. I've got it on my computer. Should I
Yeah,
read you a
pull it
bit?
up.
But
Yeah, yeah.
I've actually made my own interpretation of it because
Oh my
unless
God,
you
I want to hear
understand,
this. Yeah, yeah.
well, actually, look, I'll send it to you. But unless you understand, now where is it? Yeah, unless you understand what's really going on, it's a sort of nutball thing. Uh, yeah, okay. So at one point she's saying there is no original sin. No one is born with sin. You create sin when you act in ways without love and compassion. Um, so, and then,
That's a good one. That's a really
yeah,
good
so,
one.
oh yeah, here she is. Okay. So what's actually going on here, Jordan, is this. She's in a trance, like sitting cross-legged, probably in a cave. And she says, Christ is saying, and she's the disciples sitting around her. She goes, Christ is saying that he is free from the bonds of space and time, released from earthly desires, that he is at one with all that is, like the seasons, like time itself. He exists and in eternal now, in stillness and in peace. So he's telling them he's all right. You know what I mean? So
Oh.
it's very it's very advanced metaphysics. But if you're translating that and you're a sort of expert in Aramaic and stuff, but you don't understand what's going on,
Mm-hmm.
you just put the spirit says, and you think, well, what spirit? What are you talking? What was it? So it's almost like you have to understand Mary Magdalene was a channeler to understand. So that was the real resurrection. He did speak to them after death, but he didn't sit down and have 2 eggs, bacon, beans, and a cup of tea, sort of thing. So, and he was just showing that, and he carried on teaching them. Then he talks about, giving them a few more lessons and how to live, and then he says, right, go and preach the word, sort of thing. It's even what the bit that exists is absolutely amazing. But I mean, I'd love to read the whole thing. But maybe in time it'll happen.
Yeah.
When people understand that Mary Magdalene was a channel, it's almost like, oh wait, it's there's a lot of, well, there aren't many on that level, but there's a lot of women who are channeling all different levels, but it's all the same information. So I mean,
That's interesting that it's all the same information. It's sort of the idea that like we're not discovering anything, we're
yeah,
uncovering it for us in this
that's
life.
right.
But everything that
Remembering it.
we experience it's already all been experienced. It's
Yeah,
all
yeah, yeah.
available and none of it's ours, but we get to go in the library of life and kind of pull it off and
Well, yeah, and I feel it's a bit like you've got this great painting, like Christ's teaching was this great painting, and I'm just trying to wipe the dust off it and just show people what the original was, because but there's been
yeah.
loads of great Christians who just believe the Bible as it is, but all I'm saying is there was more to it, but there's even more amazing, and the fact that he came back himself, but he never says who he is because, like all these people on the net are sort of, oh, I'm Mary Magdalene, this is Jesus. That maybe they are, but it's a level of talent and intelligence that's sort of out of the ballpark. I mean, if you look at Mozart, I mean, he was writing symphonies when he was 9 years old. So I mean, um, and then he went on. He died when he's 34, and people are still playing his operas all the time because it's an absolutely astonishing talent. You know what I mean? It's way out of anything I can do. So
Well,
I
I
mean,
think that like there's
Shakespeare
something
was the
to
same.
that. Like certain
Sorry,
environmental, well, like that's the big thing to me, and I think that's why I wanted to do this whole podcast because it's like if
yeah,
you are supported by people in your environment, like Mozart at 9 years old, like he was given a
mm,
lot of tools and support and resources to be able to do
mm,
that, and that was the case for a lot of his career. Granted, he had to like fight back a lot of things to,
mm,
work with the politics, but I just think that like everybody has that to an extent, everybody has that energy within them, and that's what I like feel about the auroras and this light, and it just feels like this mystical,
Yeah, yeah,
godlike source energy. And I think that like we all have it, but we don't necessarily know how to let it out, and the world doesn't know how to
yeah, yeah.
interpret it.
No,
And
no,
then
no, totally agree. No, everyone's an individual, and like
yeah,
even every blade of grass is individual. Everything is unique, you know. So the idea that, like, from a sort of Mother Earth's perspective, I think she would see everybody's just a manifestation of her energy, sort of thing. I don't think the sort of, oh, he's better than her, or we like that one, we don't. You know what I mean? So I know
yeah,
exactly what you're saying, but
yeah.
someone like Christ is just, it's just very advanced, you know. So I mean, like, yeah. So I mean, even Coltrane, you know, coming back and doing that, and then leaving us a chance that he wanted to unite all religions under, you know, a love supreme, just like a Buddhist or a, you know, Sufi chant. I mean, what an idea! I mean, you know,
Do you think it's just
mind blowing.
fear that doesn't let people do it? Like the fear of having to let go of all these constructed ideas that they were
Yeah,
spoon-fed as
because I think we're
kids?
given all these construction ideas from a very young age, you know, like, you know, especially in Islam, you're sort of drummed into you that this and that, and, you know, and actually the original
Mhm.
teachings were all coming from his wife, and like he was a great. You got to remember it's the same character. So in other words, Mozart was incredible piss taker and a laugh and sort of like a raconteur and just a total
Oh yeah.
genius and very human. I mean, this idea of sort of like being above everyone else. And I don't think I think it was completely opposite to that. I think they would have been very, very human and very sort of charismatic, you know.
Well, so that's
So
interesting. So, are what f- did he have female psychics in his life who he was
who?
speaking
Mozart.
to,
Yeah, yeah.
or was he like being a reincarnation of the Jesus energy? Was did he not need that? Well, I guess
No, he was
Jesus
no, he
needed
met
that
because he
too.
didn't see. Thing is, it's a balance between male and female. So in other words, a young Mozart had been Bach only 5 years before. So now he wouldn't have known that, but when he started playing the piano, you know, the subconscious
Oh,
mind would have come in and have been astonished. You know, okay, child genius or whatever you want to say, but actually, it's a worked on talent over many lives. You know, I don't know who he was before Bach in terms of music, but I'm sure he was, you know, a musician before that as well. But anyway,
some like awesome
so
troubadour going through some.
yeah, yeah, well, no, and he would have
So,
been a troubadour, and he would have like, yeah, yeah, no, totally right,
yeah.
yeah. So even when he was a Cathar, he'd have been singing sort of songs and playing a guitar and flutes, and you know, he would have been a great raconteur and everything, you know. So I mean,
Some magic flutes.
yeah. So okay, so Mozart then, when he was about 30, he met this woman called Magdalena Hofmer, who was the wife of his best friend, and she was a channeler. So he used to go to her house, and she used to channel for him. So he was understanding all
Really?
this. Yeah, he was understanding all this ISIS stuff, and yeah,
Did
he
that
was getting
change
all
his
future.
whatting? Like, was that
Well, it wouldn't. It's, you see, this is the thing.
like
It's
got
not so
more
much you.
regulated?
No, it's not so much that that he didn't know who he was. Then he was suddenly a different composer. It's more like he would have suddenly understood. Oh, well, I get right. Okay, I get what's going on. You know, so I mean, and it would have just been a more advanced sort of understanding of who he was. It wouldn't be like he suddenly was Mozart and having not been Mozart
No,
before. If you
but
see what I
does
mean,
that
it's not.
awareness of who he is and where it was coming
Yeah,
from,
yeah,
does
yeah,
that
yeah.
change the like you're going down this timeline, then boom, we're going this way now? Like, can you see that in his work at that point?
Well, it just gets better and better, doesn't it? It's like, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, basically, yeah, but it's very
You're
tragic what
wrong.
happened at the it's very tragic what happened at the end, because see, Christ never says who he is, you know, because it's like you wouldn't, you know what I mean? Like you wouldn't, because it's like, well, what would it prove? I mean, if John Coltrane said, "Oh yeah, I'm the reincarnation of John the Baptist and the Prophet Muhammad," I mean, he'd have probably been put in a loony bin, and it's just like not about claiming it. You know what I mean? It's like we have to recognise who he is. It's not up to him to say, if you see what I mean. So I mean,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
yeah. So
But
Mozart
that's
found out who he
interesting
was.
though, the way that Mozart died in the tragedy. Like there are parallels between that and Jesus, and then the way
Yeah,
that they were
well,
discarded by
I
society.
could tell you what happened, but it's not. It's a very sad story, you know. It's a very
I
sad story.
love
Basically,
sad
he died. I
stories.
tell you what, he died because he wrote the Magic Flute, and but that was his message for the world. He actually died for his art, you know, because
Well, that's how it is
because
in
he
Amadeus in the movie. Like he dies during the or he like falls over and collapses during the
yeah, but
performance
he
of
was
it.
poisoned. Yeah, he was poisoned. But yeah, yeah,
Oh,
it's very sad, you know, very sad. Yeah, but I mean, but there again, he wrote the Magic Flute, and he wrote all this amazing stuff, you know, and you can't feel too sorry about that. And then he came back and he was called Schubert, so no one really killed him off that much. And Schubert died when he was 32, and he's considered a major composer. So I mean, you know, like the talent carried on, you know. So
what were the themes in Schubert that were communicated that were different than when he was Mozart? because of different
Well, it's
time.
more like, it's funny if you listen to Bach, Mozart, and Schubert, it's almost like a continual line of musical thought, if you see what I mean. Because I mean,
The
with Bach, it was
transference of
mainly,
romanticism,
yeah, it was,
what
and
that
because obviously
means.
it's not, although it's the same talent, it's like in a new position, and new ideas are coming in, and new ways of writing music, and like, well, including Coltrane. I mean, it's that same talent, but he was born in, was it North Carolina, and so he'd have been surrounded by early blues and Afro-American music, and then he was brought up in that tradition. So he wouldn't have remembered being Mozart, for instance, but that's the level of talent. For me, it sounds exactly the same because I'm just hearing it as a connection to divine energy, and it's absolutely,
Yeah.
with Coltrane, it's absolutely massive, and same thing with Mozart. So although it's a different musical style, it's the same connection, if you see what I mean. And if he had been a
So is
healer, like,
that how, like, why, like, music needs to be encouraged to grow and transform and become new things because it's just becoming refined over time, or it's matching the vibration of like contemporary society
yeah,
and
it's matching the
speaking to where
vibration
it
of
needs to
contemporary.
go?
Exactly. So he would have wanted to communicate with people. And at the time it was jazz. And like, actually, you know what? There is a church of John Coltrane. And apparently what happened was he walked into a club, and there was a blind psychic. And the blind psychic obviously, couldn't see him. And the blind psychic said, "Oh, the Christ energy has just walked into the room." So I'm not the first person to think that, if you see what I mean. Like, it's quite a tradition of thinking there's something very, very strange about this guy. And yeah, so yeah, incredible talent, incredible talent. So
So how is
yeah.
all of this, like, all of this knowledge that you've amassed, how has that, like, affected your life? Because I know, like, because I've seen the film that your son made and like some of the conversations around that. Is it hard? Is
Yeah.
it tough to integrate these ideas with the people that are directly around you?
Well, yeah, and I've also made a sort of conscious decision that I'm not going to, like, people have made films about what I've been into and all that, and some of them, have taken the piss and sort of, and I've just decided I'm not responding to any of this. Like I'm just doing my thing, and people have got to make of it whatever they want. I'm not going to get, even if someone did something horrible, I just think, okay, well, that's your opinion. I'm not going to get upset. See what I mean? So yeah, Liam made a film, and actually his arguments were somewhat. It does remind me of a few things, but I mean, what I hadn't expected, I thought that people would be interested in this, and they would sort of, oh wow, I must go and look into that myself. But actually, it wasn't like that. It was like
Mhm.
people got really, really upset. I mean, like, even worse than what's in Liam's film. So I mean,
Oh.
um, but then I have
Wait,
to
wait,
be
what was their reaction to it? Like, why the one that you were in, the one that you started?
no, I mean, sorry, to my life, like, people would get very upset. I mean, to be fair to them, when I first got into this, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Or it was like this whole sort of question. I couldn't stop thinking of other questions I wanted to ask, and
Yeah.
I couldn't stop talking about it. And I was like a bit of a. I think I was a bit unhinged. I'm not. I wouldn't dispute that. And I think people maybe thought I was getting sucked into some sort of cult, and like, I
Oh.
could see why people were worried. I could actually, looking back on it now, I think, God, I was an absolute nutball. But it was, what it was I was just so excited about it, and all these memories were suddenly making sense, and I was having visions of the pyramids, uh, but
It's
it's
like
all
the
cooled down.
inability to process passion.
Yeah, yeah, it was like, and I kept thinking, am I going bonkers? Like, maybe I'm going bonkers. And then I was thinking, no, I'm not. The Bible is bonkers. It's not me. It's everybody else. So, um, yeah, but now I'm sort of cool. I mean, one thing I do like about being around people that don't believe in it is it's sort of like, I don't talk about it. You know what I mean? I mean, I don't. I think it's quite
That's
good just to talk about
that's interesting.
normal stuff. You know what I mean? Because otherwise, you can just sort of like get into this stuff too much, I think. So, I mean, I don't feel, like, nowadays I have a lot of friends who are interested in it, and quite a lot of women contact me on the quiet, and I'm sort of like hopefully giving them a bit of confidence to sort of step forward and take their power, and then other times I'm just not talking about it at all, but I quite like that. So it doesn't, now there aren't any rows about it, because I'm very stable with what I believe, and I'm just trying to get it. Now I'm concentrating on trying to get it out to the public. I'm not trying to find more and more answers to questions, so. Yeah, so and also I've had some terrible bollocks about it, like, including Iceland thing. Like, one guy took a real dislike to me, and it was pretty horrible, actually. But
What?
now we're the
Wait,
best
wait,
of
what
friends. You see,
happened?
he just thought I was completely full of shit, and that
Oh,
that I didn't have any psychic ability, and I was just full of bullshit. And
oh,
then he just really went at me, like really, really, and it went on and on. And actually, it sort of sobered me up, funny enough, because you were like, I wasn't going to take, revenge or have a go back. I just thought, yeah. And I actually thought, actually, I have behaved a bit like a knobhead, sort of. So I actually took it as a lesson, right? I've got to be calmer about this, because this is just starts driving everyone nuts. So, and actually we're really good friends now. So it's,
Oh,
and I can understand how people don't get it, but I mean, yeah, and I also think that I was overestimated. Look, I've got a bit of psychic talent myself, but it's only a bit, and it's nothing like what women have got, or some women have got. But I didn't know the sort of limit of it and where I was imagining things and what I was actually able to do. Now once again, I sort of know pretty much what I can do and what I can't do, and don't overestimate my own sort of, So well, I
is
try
it
not
more
to.
like it
So
comes in waves? Like you've described it as like
yeah, no,
vision,
what
an
it's
idea
like
will
is,
come to you or something will come to you. Is it something that you can like meditate with and get calm and answers come to you like you did on the
yeah,
mountain?
yeah, like what happens with, and it's always happened with music as well. Like I'll think about a problem, and then and it's like a radar that starts spinning, and then I'll start grabbing ideas from all over the place. Now suddenly go, oh no, that's the answer to it. So that's how I.
Yeah.
So even like that 33.3% and 6666 and all that. That was because I kept thinking 666. It's not. It's. I kept thinking it's a code. It's a code. It's a code. Well, what is it? Like it's not. I know this. I know this. And that went on for a few months. And then I suddenly realised. I think I bought this second-hand bike, and it just had 333 written on it. And I suddenly thought, 333. Oh, hang on, if there's a
You got the
third missing, then
Trinity
that's
written there.
66.6. And I said, oh, that's it. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
so, so, yeah. So I sort of get yes or no answers, and then so I've been thinking a lot about the Prophet Muhammad recently, and I think he might have left his original teaching in very advanced understanding of the star formations. So I've been looking through the Quran, looking
Oh.
for references to the stars and stuff. So, like for instance, I'll give you an example. Like he said that his daughter was like Venus. He said Fatima is like Venus, Ali is like the moon, and he's like the sun. So okay, Prophet Muhammad is the sun. That's the source of the light, and the moon reflects the light. But Venus goes around the sun. Venus and the Earth go around the sun over 8 years, and they create this rose pattern in the heavens called the rose line. And
Oh,
during
interesting.
that time, there's 99 full moons. So when he's talking about the 99 names of Allah, I think he's talking about an understanding of the Venus star and the 99 full
Oh,
moons. Yeah, do you know what I mean? And he would have known all this stuff because he had access to all very advanced knowledge. So I think he put it in the stars, sort of out of reach of people that wouldn't. You've got to sort of think outside the box. And then he talks about Sirius quite a lot, and Sirius only appears once every so often. I think he's talking about how female energy will disappear and reappear, kind of thing. And so I've been looking into the star formations to try and
hmm.
see if I can, I've already found some evidence of that. So
Wait,
the
so
reason,
does
by
that
the
mean
way,
the emergence of the feminine energy is dependent on solar like celestial positioning?
well, partly like because I asked this question, I said, why is Venus the goddess star? I asked higher
Hmm.
dimensions this, and they said it's
What did you
because
get?
well, as Venus goes, that the moon, full moon, like the gravitational pull that the moon has on the Earth, sort of thing, like all the water gets drawn towards it.
Yeah.
Well, as Venus goes past the Earth, there's an alteration in gravitational pull that releases a lot of divine female creative energy. So, in other words, it's almost like the
Oh.
goddess star comes by, and it's like women get this sort of sudden surge of, of sort of, and it's because it's to do with alteration of gravitational force. So,
Wait, now you have Earth, Venus, and Mars, and they're on the other sides. Is that masculine energy? Is that a pole as well at the same time?
well, I don't know the answer to the question, but now that you brought it up, see, this is how coincidences work. I will actually look into it. I don't know. I don't know. I
Because
mean,
it seems
Venus is,
like maybe like Earth is like the ultimate place where this balance and the merging of these
yeah,
two masculine and feminine energies is supposed to
yeah, yeah.
be. Huh.
Well, now you've come up with a theory. I'm going to have to look into it myself. So, I mean, I can't answer the question because I haven't looked into it, but that's the Venus star thing. So, in other words, like, you know, if you look at Botticelli Venus, they're actually talking about, the goddess energy sort of thing, so, and all the great, so in other words, that sort of pyramid thing on when you say like Cleopatra's Needle, and um,
Hmm.
they're basically representative of a direct contact between Venus and the Earth. Like they're sort of divine female temple.
Oh,
I mean,
Venus.
obviously, like Venus is actually moving, but you can't have a sort of a moving stone thing. But I mean, it's basically symbolic of pointing to the stars, and it's very interesting that
It's
if you look
interesting
on
that
the south,
it's a masculine phallic symbol in a way that is like pointing to try to get the feminine energy.
well, no, I hadn't thought of that, but yeah,
Very
okay.
yeah, very masculine creation.
Seeking the divine feminine, yeah, okay, yeah, so so there we go. But so that's about where I'm up to. About I think you might have covered everything there, Jordan.
Well, I
I mean,
love
if people
hearing all
hear
this
this and they
stuff.
want to hear more, then I'm happy to come back. But I don't know whether I know anything else.
Well, I think that's what's going to happen. That once I air this conversation, it's going to bring people are going to bring a lot of questions to me about like things that we could talk about in our next chat.
All right.
And I think
Look,
that
well,
might be
okay.
maybe next time what we got to do is you got to get the flute out and you have to play all these different themes and stuff, and you can talk to how the vibrations hit you differently. That could be really cool.
All right. There was one thing actually. She actually sang me something. She said that I can. She said I can hear you playing this like in 12, in the 13th century, and it was this very simple song,
Hmm.
but because it's on tape, I wrote down what she was singing, and then I made it into a piece of music. So I sort of thought, like, so I mean, it's also the funny thing is now I've realised that really it's. I mean, she often says to me now, like, that people are interested in all this psychic stuff, but if you want to know about the magic of life, she just says, go and look at a tree. Just go and look at a tree. That's all you need to do. You know what I mean? And it's actually,
Yeah. Go
I
hug a
get,
tree and just
yeah, I get,
feel
well,
it.
or just go and look at it and try and understand what it is, because it's a conscious being that just exists in a different timeline, and it's like, and I'm into this new theory that I've been looking into that. I think that if you're ill, because plants are conscious and they're conscious of you, if you're
Mhm.
ill, and you leave your garden wild, the right plant that needs to heal you might start growing towards you. Now, I've heard about 3 or 4 examples of, like, there was one woman who had a heart problem, and certain things were growing in her garden that for heart, exactly what she needed. So I think that the garden might be sort of Mother Earth might be giving us what we need if we just let her free to sort of, you know.
Yeah.
And I don't even know whether that's true, but that's the sort of theory I'm working on at the moment. So
So
never
that's
stops for me, Jordan. You see?
I guess that's like to wrap it all up, like that is the message that like when we get into our bodies and we get away from all these like external desires and things that we're trying to like have conquests about in life,
Mm.
we can be tapping into our feminine side, which allows us to connect to Mother Earth, which
Yeah,
is the closest thing, the strongest power around us to
but do
this
you know
God
what
energy.
upsets me, though, Jordan? Like, you walk around and everyone's like becoming more and more detached from what's going on. It's like you walk through the park and everyone's listening to someone else, everyone's talking to someone else. It's like, nature's all happening and no one's sort of taking any notice. It's like it's kind of concerning. So yeah, so I don't have a mobile phone, and I just like walking around the park and see what's going on.
Good for you.
But scientists talk in this funny way, but you can't make you can't make, no one can make anything conscious, if you see what I mean. I mean, they can take something that's conscious and replicate it and make it into something else and gene this, that, and the other, but they can't make the initial spark of life, so that they've got nowhere near it because it's infinite. So it's infinitely encoded. So this idea you're going to have a theory of everything, it's all just sort of nonsense. You can't, how can you have a finite theory for an infinite reality? You can't. So everything that I've said today is only just a sort of opening a door and a glimpse of something. I mean, I don't understand it at all, if you know what I mean. But I mean, it's just having asked these questions, I sort of feel like I've got a bit of a grip on it, that's all. A
Yeah.
bit of a grip on an infinite knowledge. So
Well, if this is the type of the tip of the iceberg, I can't wait to like explore it some more and like see where all this
okay.
goes. And
Okay, well, look, when people have seen this, if they're interested, or you could get a list of questions. But I mean, there's loads of questions I haven't, and if I don't know the answer, I just say I don't know. It's not. I don't have any problem with that. Sort of thing. But if I've asked the question, I'll just tell them what's been said.
yeah. Well, thank you so
Jordan,
much for being here. This was just
oh no, it's brilliant. I
fantastic.
really, really,
I'm
really
just
enjoyed it.
so
It was great.
nourished by everything you've been saying and it really hits me
Oh,
in a very positive way.
oh, brilliant. Well, look, and
And
your
thanks for
family meet.
recording with Jay again. That aired
Hey,
last week. The Midnight Hearth theme that you guys did.
oh, did people like it?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Oh, oh,
I mean,
brilliant.
I personally played it for like when you guys first did that, I played it for so many people. I mean,
All
I've
right.
listened to it probably like hundreds of times at this point. Just
Oh,
like
God. Well, it's a
so
pleasure doing it. I
mesmerized.
really enjoyed it. I was glad that, like Jay and I, he's literally Jay and Bill, are my best friends just about. And like we've known them for so long. It's brilliant. So it's great to just, have a great connection with the family. So it's brilliant talking to you, John.
Well, so great. Yeah, so great having you. So great talking to you. Let's do this again sometime.
Okay, see you soon.